Okay, just a quick little announcement, I guess, before we get into the proper review. Um, it's currently June, as I've been like filming and editing this, putting it all together, which, as I'm sure you're aware, is Pride Month, and I thought to kind of really celebrate the end of the Buffyverse, send it out in style, do something special to mark the occasion properly. It'd be cool to make this review a fundraiser, since you can now like integrate fundraisers actually into videos on YouTube, which wasn't the case when I did my fundraiser for Black Lives Matter a couple of years ago. So it's a lot simpler, which is nice. And yeah, since my channel's always been a very, open, welcoming, safe space for people, or like to, I hope it is. I wanted to kind of mark Pride Month and celebrate that and raise money. So I did put a tweet out asking for suggestions for charities because I'm not too well versed in which ones are appropriate and good to support. And the majority of responses I got were about the Trevor Project. So that is what we're going to go for. And this whole review is going to be a fundraiser for the Trevor Project. They focus on suicidal prevention for lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, questioning, asexual youth, and also providing support to their parents and guardians, educators, allowing them to in turn support said youth. So they're doing really good work. Very cool, important cause to celebrate at all times of the year, but since it is Pride Month, it feels very appropriate to really take action with it. So yeah, hopefully I haven't tried this before, and obviously if you're watching this on Patreon, then this isn't going to apply to you. Just find the YouTube video if you will. But yeah, there should be, I think there's probably like a little section somewhere underneath the video near like the subscribe and join and all those buttons to donate to the fundraiser. I don't know what target I'm going to set yet. I'll wait until I actually post the video to do that. But yeah, if you're able to, and you can donate even something small, it's going to make a big difference in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, hopefully we can raise some money for a very cool, amazing, important cause. So obviously there's no pressure. If you can't afford to donate, please do not feel obliged or obligated to. Just being here and enjoying the review is more than enough, and the support is wonderful as it is. But if you can spare anything, it would be wonderful, and it would mean very, very much if you could kind of support the Trevor Project and all their good work. So yeah, I just thought it would be a nice way of kind of sending off the Buffyverse in style to do a big celebration like this. So yeah, donate if you can, don't worry if you can't, and regardless, I hope you enjoy the review. Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of Angel Season 5. We are at the end of the Buffyverse. This is it. At least, for the live action stuff, obviously. But yeah, 3.5 years, 7 seasons of Buffy, 7 reviews of Buffy seasons, 5 seasons of Angel, and now our 5th review of Angel seasons as well. So yeah, that's a lot of hours, and that's just if you talk about these bloody reviews that are always the length of movies, much less all the editing time and all that jazz that goes into covering the Buffyverse over the last few years. But this feels like the proper closing of the book, in terms of like my main coverage of the Buffyverse. That there'll be other stuff we'll do, but in terms of like frequent, regular, scheduled content regarding the Buffyverse, this is kind of where it's all been leading when I decided to start watching Buffy 2.5 years ago. So it feels weird to be here and to have put lots of pages of notes together. Spoilers, there you go. And kind of be like, oh wow, I'm never going to do that again. That was weird. And be like, oh, let's think about some predictions for next season. Oh wait, I don't need to do that. There isn't a next season. So yeah, it feels weird to have reached this point, but it's still very exciting, and yeah, it's cool to have kind of earned this feeling of like, oh wow, we've really accomplished something here over the past few years. We've built up an amazing community of people, Had some wonderful support on the reactions, some really insightful discussions, some real kind of beautiful stories that people have, been so open to share, as well as we kind of gone through the highs and lows of Buffy and Angel together. And yeah, it kind of leads us here. I'm also, I think it's been about a month now since I finished Angel. Life has been very busy recently with stuff and things. So, I haven't gotten to this as quickly as I would normally get to a Buffy review or an Angel review, since that's what this is, Madam Liam. Off to a brilliant start, but I'm actually quite glad I gave myself that time. I just happened to have that time, really, to process the season properly and really think it through, rewatch a few clips of my reactions, even though I hate watching myself, just to kind of remind myself, immediately, what were my thoughts immediately after this episode? How do I kind of feel about certain things now? So I think I have changed my mind about a few things since I've watched the show, in regards to this season. So I'm looking forward to kind of discussing that and talking my way through it. I think it normally takes months and months for me to maybe change my opinions on things one way or the other that I've kind of reacted to. So I don't think I'm going to say anything that's too surprising in this review, I would imagine. But you never know. It's hard to keep track of things. Some people don't listen to my thoughts anyway, so they may not know my thoughts on certain things, I guess. Although if they don't listen to my afterthoughts, I don't know why they would be here. But if you are, hi, welcome. Take a seat, grab a chair. We're going to be here a while, as we tend to be. But, granted, I know I always say this, I don't think it's going to be as long this time. But I don't have any predictions to make for a next season. So there's a whole section of the review that we normally do that we're not doing. So that will probably, that cuts out a good 15 minutes or so than it normally would. So that's something. But, I'm just going to savour the time we have together today, because we don't have much more of it after this, This is my last proper in-depth review that I do in this format. This has been a thing I've exclusively done for the Buffyverse, is these kind of end-of-season reviews. Because if I had to do it for every season of every show I reacted to, fuck knows how long that would all take, and I would never get anything done. And some people think I don't do anything anyway. So, I'm it feels quite momentous to be right, this is even the end of this kind of format of reviews, which has been a very unique part of this journey as well. But I've really enjoyed doing it. It's nice to kind of compile my thoughts like this, and it always got me, I think, in a really good kind of position to then start a new season. Because, otherwise I start a new season of a show, I finish one, start the next one, and, all that's on my mind really is the finale and what happened there. Whereas this, I can really appreciate the season as a whole. And I think that's probably why the Buffyverse has kind of captured my heart, in terms of so many things I've done on my channel. It's obviously one of my absolute favourite things to have done is Buffy and Angel. I actually think doing these reviews at the end of each season has really helped kind of cement my love for them. And because I've really kind of thrown myself into kind of analysing it in a way I do try to apply to other shows as well. But, Buffy and Angel are just so rich with stuff to kind of pick apart and analyse that it felt appropriate to kind of give them the space to have these reviews. And here we are for our 12th and final one. 5 seasons of Angel, my goodness. But yeah, I guess that's kind of everything as an introduction, I suppose. I feel like it's been ages since I've done one of these. I suppose it has been a while. So I'm kind of a bit rusty. So bear with me, I may ramble a bit, as I tend to do. But, maybe watch this in chunks. It's going to be kind of split into chunks anyway, as these reviews often are, unless you haven't seen one of these reviews before. We are kind of splitting it into sections. It's normally 6 sections. There's only going to be, I guess, 5-ish this time. Because I just first of all talk about my general thoughts and observations and discussion about the season. Just kind of looking at it as a whole, and giving some kind of, if you had to take notes in class or something to summarise a lecture, that's basically what you would take away from it, is that first section I talk about. Then I revisit predictions that I made for this season at the end of my season 4 review and see how well I did kind of predicting things that may or may not have happened this season. Then we do some character studies, so I just talk about a lot of the key characters throughout the season, my thoughts on them, their journeys and stuff, as we often do. Not every single character in the season, of course, because, my God, we'd still be talking about season 2, probably. But yeah, a good portion of the ones that I think are very significant. Then we talk about some themes that I personally picked up on with the season and kind of, discuss their importance and some examples of them, and just kind of the major ones that I myself am most drawn to and interested by that the season I thought evoked. Maybe not all of them, maybe not ones that were intended by the writers or anyone working on it. I'm sure there's plenty more that other people did think of that I haven't considered. But yeah, we talk through those as well. And then we go through favourite episodes. I do my top 5, and we also reveal the results of the poll that I put up a few days ago now. A lot later than I should have done. I completely forgot to post it. Kind of asking you guys to give me your top 3 episodes, and we had quite a few responses to that. I did kind of count the votes on that, write it all down, kind of stored that away, and then I did get a few extra comments on that, so those haven't counted, so apologies for that. And if you only gave if you gave me more than or less than 3 episodes, then they also didn't count. But thank you to everyone who did kind of post on those, and with that, we can reveal what your favourite episodes were and what order, as voted for by you guys, you would rank Angel Season 5. Results are very interesting, I think, for this season, and we can talk about that when we get to that section, but also a bit, I think, in my general thoughts as well, really ties into the results of what you guys voted for, which I do find very, very interesting in regards to, viewing this season as a whole. And then, normally the 6th and final section would be predicting some things that might happen in the next season, but we don't need to do that this time around. So just going to be the 5 core sections. But yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Oh, I am also joined by a special guest. We couldn't discuss season 5 without this guy, could we? So here's my co-host. If I remember, he'll be popping up every now and again, I suppose. Whenever I mention Smile Time. Make it a drinking game if you want. Maybe don't. Okay, so we're obviously kicking off with my general thoughts and observations and just kind of some key points of discussion that I wanted to kind of talk about generally in regards to Season 5 as a whole. If I keep looking down, it's because I'm looking at my notes, so that's why I'm staring into space, as is often the case with these reviews. I kind of want to be somewhat cohesive, so I write stuff down. And I had a lot to say about this season, so we might as well just get into it. And yeah, just any kind of things you kind of agree with or disagree with, do let me know in a calm, collected, respectful manner in the comments. And I will look forward to reading what you guys thought of this season. This one was an interesting one to kind of get to, because much as in the year or two prior to me starting Angel Season 4, and, all the build-up and comments I got about that was how much people didn't like that season, this was the exact opposite of that, because I got years and years worth of comments being Angel Season 5 is the best season, it's the best season of the Buffyverse, it's the best season of Angel, it's one of the best seasons of TV ever. So it's kind of the reverse of how Season 4 was kind of built up in my head. The general consensus of Season 4 is that it's not particularly great and people didn't really like it, and it's lots of people's least favourite season. So I'd had comments like that for a year or two probably. Even when I started Angel, actually, I'd start getting comments about Season 4 and 5. So it was interesting to kind of get into Season 4 being well, everyone hates this one, let's see how I think. And then going into this one, it's everyone seems to really, really love this season. So I think, when it comes to stuff like that and hype and things like that, luckily, as we kind of got into my last year and a bit, probably longer, of, covering the Buffyverse on the channel, I kind of stopped reading the comments for reasons that I'm sure people are aware of and we won't need to get into now, because we've had that discussion to death at this point. I'm sure we're all bored of it. But, because I've had kind of comments being like, "Oh, season 4 is rubbish. Season 4 is terrible. You know, you're really gonna hate it." You know, it was kind of so underhyped, if that's a word for me. Actually tackling it, I was like, yes, the storyline is horrendous, and I hate it, and I hate what they've done. But you know, in terms of like the general quality of the episodes and stuff, I was enjoying watching the season. I thought the season itself was solid. Just the core story was like, ooh. And obviously for some people that's going to be enough to completely obliterate it and destroy their opinion of it, which is fair and valid. But for me, I could still get some positives from it. With this one, I think I was kind of going into it probably with a bit of overhype, if anything. So it's one of those situations where I kind of wish, you know, there weren't any preconceived ideas of how the season was going to fare, which I'd kind of had for most seasons of the Buffyverse, probably with the exception of Buffy season 4 and 5 and Angel season 4 and 5. You know, I think everyone kind of just let their opinions kind of come out in the comments as those other seasons progressed, as I went through them at the same time. But, you know, there's always that idea in the fandom, it seems. You know, Buffy season 4 is one of its weakest, and Angel season 4 is its weakest, Angel season 5 is its best. So to kind of get into it, I do think my opinion was probably a bit coloured by that level of hype. So, you know, I was enjoying the first few episodes anyway, but I do think overall the season did have a bit of a slower start. I think it was definitely a slow burn of a season. And I guess I was just expecting to be firing on all cylinders for 22 episodes, which I don't think it really was, particularly the first half of the season. I will say, you know, the first half of the season I think is nowhere near as strong as the second half. I think the second half is infinitely better. And I think it's the second half that kind of gets the hype from people more than anything. Not that there aren't good episodes and really strong stuff in the first half of the season, but, you know, there weren't as many moments, I think, that really kind of blew me away in the way that I think some of the latter half of season 5 did. And that definitely reflects when it comes to, you know, you guys picking your favourite episodes of the season, me picking my favourite episodes of the season as well, because I think our top 5s are the same, bar 2 episodes I think are switched around. So, you know, I think it has some really, really kind of iconic, super strong episodes come at the best of the entire run, but a lot of that will come in the second half of the season, especially because the second half of the season kicks off with You're Welcome. You know, the 100th episode, the return of Cordelia, everything that kind of goes down there. And then it's only, you know, after that, you know, well, we fight, sure. But then, you know, it's Smile Time, and then it's the Fred and Illyria stuff for the rest of the show, and then it's the ending. You know, I think the second half of the season is, I think, in terms of quality and stuff and enjoyment, is one of the strongest runs of episodes, like strongest half of the season, certainly of Angel, maybe even of the entire Buffyverse itself. So yeah, I do think our favourite episodes in general reflect that. Maybe, you know, the first half of the season is something that you can enjoy, but maybe isn't the highest of highs that like the second half of the season gets, or previous runs in Angel have gotten, for me personally. And I think some of that is just down to it being a bit overhyped going into it. But, you know, those things happen. You know, people are always going to, you know, say what they think about things, even if it's a year or two away for a reactor. That's just something that happens, sadly. But people are excited, so you can't necessarily fault them for that. And it's one of those things that's always going to happen, unless you film, you know, the entire thing and then start uploading them. But, you know, I don't know a reactor who's recorded 144 episodes of Buffy and 110 episodes of Angel and saved them onto their hard drive and edited them before they started posting them. You know, that would be quite the undertaking. So it's one of those things. But I do think overhype affected my view of the first half of the season. There are some episodes that are just like, yeah, you know, I think we all know. An episode fairly early on in the run that a lot of the fandom aren't that keen on. And, you know, I was like, you know, this is good, this is solid. And I think overall, you know, the entire season is very, very solid. But You know, I was kind of waiting for like, when's it going to start feeling like a season that everyone loves? You know, I wasn't quite getting that yet, and obviously then, I think the second half really pays that off in a big way. But yeah, considering, you know, it was kind of a rushed ending in the end, and they had no choice in that because of the cancellation stuff, I think season 5 does a really, really good job of wrapping up, you know, the core character arcs and the series arcs, the stories, the themes, all of like the main plot of the show. I do think season 5 ties it up really, really well. Considering, you know, the whole cancellation, you know, fairly late into production on the season, so they kind of had to rush what their plans would have been for like a potential 6th season and everything. All that considered, while I do think that clearly shows what else are you going to do in that situation, really, I still think they pull it off in a really wonderful way in the end. I still think, you know, for the most part, they hit the emotional beats and they hit the good plot points that, you know, they would have had a slower build up to in like a season 6 or whatever. They still, I think, hit most of the marks in regards to wrapping up Angel and giving it a conclusion worthy of, you know, 5 really good seasons. And also, like, in terms of just general plot wise for the whole season, you know, the kind of soft reboot we got at the end of season 4 heading into this season with them now all working at Wolfram and Hart, and then, you know, the early episodes of the season, you know, it kind of felt a bit more like, okay, this episode's about this episode's about this, you know. It wasn't like, here's a big arc that we're clearly setting up right from the start. You know, they kind of went Monster of the Week formula a bit early on in this season, you know. I think the Nina, like, werewolf episode quite early on in the season kind of really made that clear. It was very kind of like back to basics. This is how it's going to be for the start of the season, and then that kind of grows and evolves and changes as time goes on. But I think it probably needed that revamp after how weird and complex and slightly messy the plot got with season 4, and the whole Cordelia Connor thing. You know, I do think they did well to really bounce back from that plot wise. You know, I think it could have easily lost people after season 4, and in regards to like actually plotting the season, I imagine they won a lot of people back with what season 5 was doing. And yeah, they definitely got it right, I think, in terms of how they approached the start of the season. And then, you know, if people were a bit unsure after season 4, like, do I want to carry on watching this because things were a bit weird? You know, I think the early episodes, you know, while I don't think they're the highest highs of season 5 by a long mile, I do think they are enjoyable enough and good enough, and like the surprise of like Spike coming back and stuff like that, having a bit of fun with that character and his relationships with Angel and some other characters. You know, I do think that is enough to kind of win people back over, get people intrigued enough, and then, you know, they're like, okay, they've obviously righted their wrongs, we're back on board here. And then it's about at that point in the season, I think, when people would be won over again, that they start doing some stuff that kind of carries on and continues arc-wise for the rest of the season. So I think, you know, particularly story-wise, above all else, they really bounce back from season 4's plot quite significantly, and I think that's, you know, a huge achievement. And, you know, they made it look easy, so I think that does kind of, you know, it's noteworthy praise, I think, towards that. And yeah, we already talked about the slow burn of the season. So we did have some really solid episodes kind of going on in that first half, but I do think the second half is considerably better. And yeah, I think another success for me was season 5, and this also reflected in our favourite episodes and my favourite episodes. I don't think I've ever found it easier to pick a top 5. I thought them straight away. And normally I'm kind of like, oh, I should probably include some honourable mentions here, because you know, they could have easily made my top 5, but they just missed out, so I'll mention them. I didn't have to do that with season 5. I just like, I'm happy with my top 5. That's that. And in a way, I think that could reflect badly on the season, because I'm like, well, you know, the other 17 episodes aren't worthy, and that's it. even though there are some really great stuff in it. And to be honest, I think there's only like 1 or 2 episodes of the season that I probably would happily never watch again. So that's still a good run for a 22 episode season of television, to only really have like maybe 1 or 2 that I'm like, oh, no. That's incredible odds, particularly when you think of stuff nowadays. Sometimes with 22, 23 episode seasons of TV now, it's kind of 50-50, I think, whether you're going to enjoy an episode or not week to week. But yeah, I do think the kind of highest of highs did come a bit later on, and that certainly shows in regards to like general consensus with the voting and stuff. And while I had an easy time picking a top 5, that doesn't mean there aren't still some really, really great episodes scattered throughout the entire season itself. But I personally I want to look at that in a more positive way in regards to, I think, because again they go back to basics, and they kind of, a clear arc doesn't, I think, present itself until a bit later on. I feel like for me, the big shift in like, okay, Monster of the Week, standard affair, episode to episode is over now, kind of changes when Lindsay pops up again at the end of episode 8, and then you kind of realise that, okay, that's a character who hasn't been seen in 3 years. This is like a long-term thing coming back now. Here's where the fun begins, and I think it certainly does escalate and shift there in like terms of what the story does structurally with that season. So yeah, I think there is something to be said for, like, I look back on like season 4, I'm like, it's a solid season, but maybe there aren't that many like super high highs. I think of like the Faith episodes, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's great stuff. But I'm like, it's just consistent quality, for better or worse, it's consistent. And therefore like the story and everything, because it's such a wide spanning story that basically takes up all the 22 episodes. Same with like season 3, I think, is similar. Season 2 is similar as well, for the most part. I think then for me, I think Buffy season 7 is kind of the same, and Buffy season 3, it just all blends in together. Like you say like, oh, what happened in this particular episode? I'm not sure I could tell you specifically, because of like such a long running arc. It kind of all just blends in together for me. And I think we definitely had that with like, particularly season maybe 2, 3, and 4 of Angel. So I actually quite liked the refreshing change of starting off the season kind of going back to that basic formula. I think the start of season 5 is the most season 1-esque it's felt since season 1, but with the learnings of, this isn't our first season anymore. We kind of know properly how to handle these kind of episodes. It's not going to be we're not going to be having more expecting or she's here in the for the most part. And I actually quite liked that refreshing change, even if it maybe in the long run, or looking at it as a whole, you're like, I could probably, I've seen the first half of the season. Maybe I'm going to be revisiting the second half a bit more, unless I am just marathoning the entire Buffyverse and I am going to watch them all in order. If I had to pick and choose, I would more often than not just be putting on the second half of the season. So yeah, I quite like that change when it comes to this season. I think again, it's a good strategy for winning people over after season 4, and you really are asking the audience a lot to follow this show over multiple years and follow the same kind of overarching story across multiple seasons. It's not like Buffy has a distinct big bad every single season. Angel never really had that, and again, that's a thing that I quite liked, that separated it out. It's been mainly Wolfram and Hart the entire time in the background, and then you'll have kind of bigger foes like Holtz or Jasmine, and then Wolfram and Hart kind of take on Team Angel and they start running it in season 5. I like that development and what that changes structurally about the season, and I think that pays off in terms of the story of the show, and the structure of this season. It is fresh and it does feel like a bit of a reboot and a revamp that was clearly needed at the time based on how season 4 seems to have been received when it aired, and in the 20 plus years since. So yeah, I quite like that, even if it feels like it's a criticism, because I'm like, well, I picked my top 5 episodes easily, forget the others. That's not what I'm trying to say with that. And I hope I've kind of got that across. I hope that makes sense, in regards to sometimes some episodes just need to be solid foundations for later episodes to actually have the chance to shine. Not everything is going to be an episode like The Body or Once More With Feeling or Are You Now or Have You Ever Been, or I don't want to name episodes this season because that's just going to give away my top 5, but the ones. So I think Buffyverse in particular, I think really takes that into consideration, and I think uses it to its advantage that not every episode is going to be the best episode of everything you've ever seen. And I think the slow burn of season 5 really helps with that, because there's always a solid episode, even if there may be a slightly boring one, every 6 or 7 episodes in regards to this season, I would say. It is building up to just a straight run of basically gold, I think, in like the last few episodes of the show. So, if you're going to do it, what a way to end the season with like a run of really, really great episodes, considering like this is it as well. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And this season, and therefore the show as a whole, ended on a real high. And if you're going to do it, the final season is a great one to tackle that with. So I really enjoyed that. And yeah, all the cast, as always, were fantastic. I think a huge shout out also should go, to David Boreanaz for, being the staying power and, the main lead for 5 seasons. And I think he did a really great job. He definitely evolved as an actor from when we first met him in Buffy to, the start of Angel to now. I think he really grows and changes, and his acting just gets better and better, I think. And he kind of really justifies being that leading man. And then everyone else, who's kind of been around for a very long time as well, are just always fantastic. Even if, it's one of those things, characters like Lorne, for the most part, they are often set dressing most episodes and don't get that much to do. But when they do get some good material, they're reliably great with it, and it's always amazing. So yeah, David Boreanaz definitely gets a shout out there, and I think Amy Acker, for obvious reasons, but the fact that she had like 2 very distinct and very different roles to play in this season in the end, and the difference is clear as day. Even when she's not blue, you can still tell when it's Illyria in Fred's body, and that it's a revelation, I think, like the turn she kind of takes in terms of like her physicality and her performance in those last few episodes when she makes the switch. So it is really great that she also got a huge chance to kind of shine and show people what she can do. And then also James Masters, I think, kind of coming in, having only been in 1 episode of Angel prior to this, and that was its 3rd ever episode, to then make a grand return. I think some of it's also probably for ratings, to get people to watch, because Spike's hugely popular, and because Buffy was over, so maybe if people just wanted more Spike, they can bring him in. I think they do a great job of bringing Spike in to the show, and they could have easily risked undoing a really great end to his character on Buffy, but I think they kind of justify it fairly quickly, bringing him into it, because I think they do enough with him to really justify that change. And by the end, I think he gets an even better ending than what the end of Buffy would have given him, which was already, in my opinion, really good. And yeah, Spike slots into the cast of characters seamlessly. I think he brings something very needed to the season. And James Masters obviously always great as Spike. It's always so likeable. And yeah, he just clearly fits in with the rest of the cast really well as well, and he bounces off all of them brilliantly. You know, the early episodes really lean into his relationships with Angel and Fred, I think, in particular. And, you know, it's just great to see. And that kind of bit of familiarity from Buffy to coming into Angel is also really cool. And I think one of the best things about having James on board the show for this season, having Spike around, is, you know, the absence of Cordelia, I think, is a big thing with this season, and I do think you feel it. I think there's a lot of heart that might be missing from the season as a whole, and that is clearly Cordelia and Charisma's presence on the show. You really do feel that, but I think having Spike on board and having James on board goes part way to trying to fill that void a bit. So I think Spike's character and, you know, the comedy that he can kind of bring to, the lightheartedness he can bring to situations and stuff, he's probably the closest match energy-wise in terms of like a character you can have around in a show like Angel to Cordelia. So if we can't have Cordelia around, I think bringing in Spike does kind of give us a little taste of what would be missing from the dynamic otherwise. So I do think season 5 would be much less without Spike around to kind of give us a character in a similar vein to Cordelia. You know, it's still very vastly different characters. And I do think, you know, the void that is Cordelia and her relationships with everyone would have improved season 5 even more. And I already think it's a really great season. It's great that we do have at least Spike there. So I think, you know, a lot of the fire from season 5 probably wouldn't be there without Spike's presence. Because Spike does get given a lot to do in this kind of season of Angel. And I think it would be quite hollow to not have Cordelia around and to also maybe not have a character like Spike. You know, I think maybe they'd either have to bring Lorne into much more prominence, which they always seem very reluctant to do, sadly, or introduce a whole new character, like an original character who kind of has similar energy. But I think what they did instead kind of was worth it. So yeah, I enjoyed what they did with that in terms of trying to make up for the absence of Cordelia. And yeah, the back to basics start of the season evolving into like a wider story, I thought really worked well, because, you know, it kind of starts with back to basics, then we have Lindsay showing up, like, oh shit, Cordelia's back for the 100th episode, oh shit, and then, you know, we get Smile Time, and then A Hole in the World, and the Illyria kind of arc, and then it's like the end of the show arc as well. You know, I like that there's a clear structure to that, and the season itself kind of goes through character development in its structure as the characters also change and grow, which I think is really cool. So I like that a lot. I think my only thing in terms of like criticisms as the season as a whole, I do wish, and I think this is a common complaint with most seasons, I do wish more was spread around character-wise in terms of who got the focus. Because as great as it is to have Spike here, I do think there was a lot of Spike focus in Angel Season 5. And while that is great to see more Spike, on the other hand, I do also wish at least some of that screen time was given to, you know, characters who had been there since Season 1 or 2. Like Gunn, like Lorne, who I think kind of never quite got as much as they deserved. And there were so many episodes, it felt like, in Season 5 that was just about Angel and Spike kind of bickering and the Shanshu thing. It felt like there were quite a few episodes, particularly again in the first half of the season, which maybe feels like it bogged down a bit. You know, it feels like they're going over the same argument again and again. And then at least they kind of change it up to have like an Angel and Spike arguing about something episode with the girl in question, because at least that's about Buffy rather than just the Shanshu prophecy, who's worthy, who's not. So I feel like they do that, you know, a lot in Destiny. And then they do it again in Sole Purpose, which is only like 2 episodes later. And while it's entertaining to watch those two, and, you know, the show's called Angel, of course he's going to get the most focus, I do think there was a bit too much of that when, you know, you could have just had one episode about that, and then the other, and a bit of, you know, some other stories probably could have been given to the characters who actually had been in Angel, longer. But I imagine it could be like a network behind the scenes thing. Spike's clearly a very popular character. The Angel and Spike dynamic is always going to be fun to watch. Let's give some focus to that. It's probably kind of how that plays out in the end. So yeah, I do wish maybe some other characters had been given more to do and some more bands of storylines there, but that's not necessarily like, you know, me hating on any inclusions this season, because, you know, I've had that issue with how characters have been treated like that in the past anyway, and, you know, that wasn't Angel and Spike kind of stealing all the screen time in that sense, because, you know, Spike wasn't around until this season properly. So, you know, it's one of those things, and, you know, it's not like what we got was bad anyway. It's always the what if of like, if actually been given, you know, a bit more of the others, I think would have been nice, but it is what it is. I feel it worse with this one because it is the last season and we don't see these characters again. And when we do get stuff with them, it's really cool. So, you know, it's kind of the opposite of, they gave Connor so much in season 4, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, no, give this to good characters that people like. And then I think they finally get Connor as a character in those last couple of episodes of season 4, and it's really, really interesting, but I'm like, it's just too late now, and you've wasted a whole season on this brat. Which is such a shame. So it's kind of like almost the opposite of that. It's like, I guess I at least prefer with season 5 is they're losing maybe potential focus and screen time to at least some stories that's good with Angel and Spike. Even if that's a bit repetitive, at least it's good and fun to watch. But season 4, you know, they were losing it to a storyline that I just did not want to see. So, you know, I guess again that's kind of an improvement and something they learned from season 4. And, you know, fan service is a big deal back then, and it's still a big deal now. You know, we live in the world of multiverses and cameos. Who's going to show up in The Mandalorian next? You know, who's going to be in Multiverse of Madness? You know, it's just that culture, really. Which is kind of fair enough that they would lean into it. You know, it's kind of the smart play. So, you know, I understand why it's the case, but it's still a shame, I think. And then we have some kind of characters and overall ideas that I think, despite how much focus some of them might get, do still come across as a bit undercooked or half-baked or outright dull. I'm talking about Eve. The first half of the season really tries to make Eve happen, really tries to make her a thing. I don't get it. I never got it. And again, it's one of those things, you know, other characters could have had some focus, and yet they're giving Eve something to do in every single episode, or like some big scene. I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't care about you. And it was so obvious she was dodgy, but the show was trying to make it seem like she wasn't. And then it's like a big twist that she's kind of in league with someone shady. I'm like, yeah, we've known that for 8 episodes. I don't know why this is like a big deal. Other than the fact that it's Lindsay rather than just some other random stuff. But we knew we shouldn't trust her. And the show really tried to kind of force her on us. I'm like, but, you know, Fred's right there. Give her something to do. You know, give Lorne something to do, please. Give Gunn something to do. I just feel like they never really did enough to justify Eve even being in the season in the end, personally. And yet I feel like we did get a good chunk of her, particularly in like those early episodes. And then, you know, some other stuff that I think don't get quite as much focus as they probably should have. But this isn't their fault. In regards to Eve, I think they could have done better writing-wise. But, you know, with like Illyria, the Circle of the Blackthorn, you know, they're very late in the game in terms of the season. They thought they were going to get season 6 to explore these ideas further and like really, you know, make a thing of them. They just didn't have the time because the show got cancelled. So, you know, it's not really that their fault, and I understand that, you know, there just wasn't time to do everything they wanted to do with Illyria, or, you know, set up the Circle of the Blackthorn properly, because it just kind of, this is who's really up to no good here, here's who we should probably stop now, and they were just kind of there. This secret society that was there all along, you know, that would obviously have been dealt with much better had they got more seasons and more to do with the show, or if they'd started this a bit earlier in the season. And it's not their fault, and I understand it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's there, and still has to kind of count against the season in the grand scheme of things, because we can only judge what we get in the end rather than the behind the scenes stuff. We can understand it, but I think that still needs to be taken into consideration, at least for me. But overall, a very consistent, really good final season that I think has a very solid first half, if a bit of a slow burn, but I think the payoff is more than worth it in the second half, which is considerably better. I think one of the strongest runs of episodes in the entire Buffyverse. They do some really good stuff with it. It sends the season and the show off on an almighty high, and if there's ever a time to get it right, it was to do it then. And I do think, considering the circumstances, they did a brilliant job wrapping up this season. And it did feel a bit different and a bit fresh, and I like the structure of it and how that all played out and changed as it got a bit closer to the middle of the season. I think there were one or two episodes that I thought were a bit maybe dull, not as interesting, or just repeating ideas from a few episodes before. But I still think those episodes, while they maybe weren't my favourites, as is often the case with Buffyverse episodes, there's always something to enjoy in them, and I think it's far from the absolute worst of Angel, I think, personally. So yeah, that kind of leaves us in a very strong kind of place with season 5 in the end, and I do think halfway through the season, or near enough halfway, I'm enjoying it. It's good, it's solid. I don't know why people love it so much and are applauding it so much. Again, that's probably overhype kind of affecting me as well. But the second half of the season, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. This is what people remember about season 5. This is what they applaud. Absolutely fair enough, and I think it's more than worthy of the praise that it gets. Even just for that last run of episodes, I think more than justifies the existence of this season as people's favourites. When I say it's my favourite overall season of the Buffyverse, I don't think I'd go that far. Is it my favourite season of Angel? Again, I don't know. I'd have to rewatch Angel, I think, now that I've done. Season 3 is still up there for me. I think it's between season 3 and season 5, so that would be something I'd have to get back to on. But if it's not my favourite season, it's my second favourite season, so that's pretty good standing for a 5th season of a show, to still be producing really solid stuff as season 5 does, and more than solid stuff for the most part in regards to the second half. But a good job after 5 years and so long, coming up with fresh ideas for the Buffyverse and everything after all those years. Couldn't have been easy, and they do a really great job with this final season overall. I think it's a real triumph by the end of it, and definitely worth the kind of slow build up and the payoff. It's really well structured, really well acted by everyone involved, really well kind of put together. The production and everything, I don't necessarily talk about things like music and makeup and all that much in my afterthoughts or my reviews in general, but I do think we had some really strong stuff in regards to that with this season as well. And yeah, there was a clear kind of reboot, revamp kind of vibe to it that I think really worked well and gelled. I think Spike was a really kind of genius addition to the cast at this point in time, with the absence of Cordelia. And yeah, they really kind of came through and nailed the final run of the show, I think. So definitely one of the best episodes, one of the best seasons of Angel overall, I would say. Consistent quality for the most part, apart from maybe one or two duds, which is an amazing run. And just something that I can't wait to kind of rewatch the entire Buffyverse now and kind of get to this point again and be like, wow, after spending so long in this world with these characters, you kind of know how it's going to tick, the sense of humour that it's going to kind of have going for it. But it's never not going to be fun revisiting it. And even after all this time, all these years, they still come up with brilliant ideas and brilliant kind of, demons and brilliant villains and threats and, relationships to kind of explore in this universe. After all that time, it really is impressive that they kind of keep up any sort of standard, much less the standard that season 5 kind of sets for itself by the end, and to bounce back from season 4. They did an incredible job with it, and I think season 5 is, brilliant kind of return to form story-wise. I still think season 4 is solid, but in terms of like story, season 5, blows it out of the water, and gives us some really iconic episodes of the show and the Buffyverse as a whole. And yeah, they kind of send the live action Buffyverse and Angel itself off on an almighty high with one of the best runs of episodes that I think we get, which is kind of astounding, really. So yeah, I really enjoyed season 5. A very, very solid season, definitely one of my favourites. And that's kind of, I guess, the general kind of discussion I wanted to have about it. Just looking at the time, whoopsie. But still, I love that I could make 6 bullet points last that long, but that's me, isn't it? It's the last time we're going to be talking about something in this much detail, so it's okay. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the season in general as a whole. We can now get into like more specific stuff, really, in regards to like, certain episodes or certain characters, certain plot lines, all of that. We'll get a bit more specific from now on. But I guess the next thing to do would be to revisit predictions that I made kind of after watching season 4 going into this one. Okay, so next we're going to revisit the predictions that I made for season 5 at the end of my review for season 4. Just kind of going from gut feelings or things maybe I knew kind of going into season 5. Just a few kind of guesses or assumptions, as I did, before starting every season. I made 6 predictions in the end, and I actually think this is probably my most successful run of guesses, I would say. I think I've done really well prediction-wise with this. I couldn't remember any of my predictions, and some of them I think were kind of easy given ones anyway, so I could fake patting myself on the back at this point. But I was actually, I can't quite remember exactly how I kind of came up with some of these and how I, justified why I thought this was going to happen or not. I'd have to rewatch my season 4 review and figure that out, but I don't like rewatching myself, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, I actually think I did a pretty damn good job. So get the obvious one out of the way first, because this was kind of the running gag in both my Buffy and Angel reviews, I think. My first prediction was that Fred continues to be a cinnamon roll, and I've just put a resounding yes, because brutal death aside, she does have some very sweet moments. Particularly her 5-minute long relationship with Wesley before it all goes to shit. Thank you, Angel, for doing that to me. But yeah, we know how much I love Fred. We know it's just always going to be a given that I'm going to love her. And yeah, she kind of always will be a cinnamon roll in my heart, even if her soul's burnt up to a crisp and she is gone forever. So yeah, that's just kind of a given. But obviously, I gave myself a big tick in that box, because yes, she would continue to be a cinnamon roll. Didn't have it in my mind that she would die, and certainly not die as horribly as she did. But, until the very end, she was a fighter, and we know I love her. So there you go. That is definitely a correct prediction for me, but it's also kind of a given and a very biased kind of one anyway. Next, I said Team Angel would build Wolfram and Hart into a good organisation. I've put yes and no for this one. Because they tried. That's what they wanted to do. Did they really succeed in that? I don't know, because I think they kind of realised that sometimes they just had to kind of lean into the morally grey elements of it. I know Angel certainly pretended to very much do that in those last few episodes, as he was kind of building their trust to try and get into the Circle of the Black Thorn. And Angel, spent many times during this season just so frustrated with, the fact that they were kind of stuck here and weren't doing with Wolfram and Hart what they maybe hoped they would be able to do. And Angel didn't like the path they were going down, and then Cordelia stepped in to try and ease that frustration, getting back on track. And I think even then he grew frustrated with it a bit more again. And seeing like the fact that there were other Wolfram and Harts around the world, like the one we saw in the Girl in Question, they didn't really have much of an impact on any of those, and there's always going to be evil in the world, blah 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 blah. It's kind of, they end up still fighting the good fight in the end, and maybe even dying, going out fighting from the very last shot of the show. So I think there are elements where they could kind of twist and bend the rules a bit, and did do some good using Wolfram and Hart, to help them out with that. But the senior partners being what they are and circumstances being what they were, I don't know if they could have made that much of a difference in the end. It's just kind of an inevitable evil in every universe, it was seen with Wolfram and Hart. So, I don't think by the end of the show, they've completely changed the reputation of Wolfram and Hart around the world, and, people consider it to be a good organisation stuff. We saw how the Scoobies and everyone kind of reacted to learning that Angel worked for Wolfram and Hart now. They kind of basically cut ties with him, which was very sad and depressing. And, didn't trust him anymore. So I don't think they kind of rectified anything with that. That's kind of just a thing that's kind of a loose end. I guess Angel's just never friends with them anymore, unless the comics change that, of course. So I while they certainly tried, I wouldn't say that they made it a good organisation. Like, they didn't even make that branch like a force for unwavering good in the end. So certainly not Wolfram and Hart, the name as a whole. So kind of a yes and no, but leaning more so on the side of no, I would say. And then my third one was that a big character from Buffy or early Angel joins the main cast. We got Spike. I wouldn't have said it was Spike, granted. I would have guessed... I don't know, what would I have guessed? I imagine I probably made a guess at the time. Maybe... Who would fit at Wolfram and Hart? I feel like I must have had someone. But I don't know. Either way, Anya as instead of Harmony, we got Anya. Can you imagine? But obviously, she was a bit busy being dead to show up and work for Angel, so maybe not. But we got Spike, and he certainly I think he kind of counts as a big character from Buffy. I think that's fairly safe to say. I'm not sure anyone could argue with that. And he's also from early Angel, technically, because he's in episode 3 of Angel. But we got Spike joining in. I don't know where that prediction came from. I'm sure I had some kind of reasoning for it at the time. It might have been people... Oh, maybe it was people hinting, actually. I feel like maybe I got some comments kind of being like... Oh, yes, because I got loads of comments, didn't I? Don't, skip these credits for episode 1 of Angel season 5. I got about 2 million comments telling me that. Which I think then led me to believe that, okay, so someone I know is joining the main cast, so I'm guessing that's going to be someone, from Buffy. That, I remember now, that's what it was. So yeah, I guess in hindsight then, that's a fairly obvious go for, and I don't really deserve much praise for guessing that, because it was basically, I was basically told. But still, it's a yes, so there we go. My fourth one was that Wesley and Fred's relationship will be explored, and again, yes, it was. Very, very briefly. It was a brightly burning candle. It burnt out very quickly. But it was explored. Fred kind of started to reciprocate those feelings, and they got together, had, a lovely 5 minutes. Then, coffin, a blood on Wesley's face. Horrible death. Grief, Illyria. Stabby, another horrible death. So, they died. They both died. But it was an exploration of their relationship, and it broke my fucking heart. So, yes, brutal exploration. I had no idea how much that was going to fucking hurt that they did explore it. But they did explore it. So, big, resounding yes, I say, happily, with a single tear running down me. Yeah, I'm really happy that happened now. God, little did I fucking know. Then my fifth one was that we'll see Connor again. Fairly standard one. I think season 4 could have easily been the end of the story with him. They could have never brought him back, and I think that would have been fine. And a nice end to the character. But we did see him again. We got him in Origin and in Not Fade Away. And it's kind of the Connor that I wish we'd always had and we'd always seen, because it's the Connor who wasn't raised by Holtz. That's the Connor that should have been, and it was cool to kind of see him really get to live that life, and to get his memories back and stuff, and he's still kind of a good balance of the one that was made by Holtz and the one that was made by Angel in the end, kind of getting to raise him in a twisted way, by erasing memories of him is his way of raising him, because it still kind of made him who he probably would have been and who he turned out to be, which is quite twisted and beautiful in a way. So yeah, we saw him again, so yes, we did. Big yes for that. I get a tick. Hooray, I get gold star. Then sixth and final one is that some major characters will die. And yeah, that again, I kind of cheated to get a yes for that one, I think, because by that point, you know, it was about halfway through season 4 that I got spoiled that Wesley was going to die. So, you know, I just knew that was coming. I think that's why I put deaths, because I knew at least one. And I thought, well, it's the final season. More people are probably going to die than just one. And it was Fred. So, yeah, it's good. And Cordelia. So, yeah, it's really great. Yeah, two of my favourites. Lovely. Thanks. Basically, yeah, like all my favourites in Angel died, didn't they? You know, my top 4 Angel characters are probably Fred, Doyle, Cordelia, Wesley. All 4 of them died. So, you know, just my luck. At least, you know, my favourites in Buffy all lived, at least. So yeah, I guess I just had it too good with my favourite characters surviving Buffy, I guess. So Angel punished me harshly by taking all of my favourites from me. But yes, we got some major character deaths, you know, quite a few of them, sadly. And they all made me cry. But yeah, kind of looking back on those 6 predictions, you know, 5 out of 6 of them are straight up yeses, so go me, I did really well. And then like the Wolfram and Hart one, kind of a yes and a no. But I think actually, in terms of resounding like yeses, I got that right in terms of predicting this season. You know, I did really well. I think it's probably the best I've ever done predicting a season, which I like because, you know, at this point I would have liked to have thought I was quite in tune with the Buffyverse and where the stories were heading. So the fact that I did correctly guess a few things like that, you know, I guess it shows that was the path that made sense for the story to go down. And that's where they took the story. So, you know, I guess I kind of got what I wanted for a lot of those things, in a way, you know, for better or worse, in terms of predicting major deaths. But there you go. So yeah, resounding success in predicting this season. And since it's the last time I'm going to be doing predictions like that, you know, I'm glad I did as well as I actually ended up doing for that. So yeah, all good stuff with those predictions. And now we head to the third section of the review, which almost always takes up the most time, as I'm sure we all know. And that is to kind of talk about all the major characters in Season 5. Okay, so a bit of a pre-warning here, I guess, just in case you do maybe notice some differences. I can't really remember. I've made sure, for continuity's sake, to wear the same shirt and stuff. But I'm actually filming the rest of this review probably like a week or so after I initially recorded it, because I sat down to edit it, and in between like the first 2 sections of the review and then filming the rest of it, I did a live stream, I think it was, or some kind of different video, and I had to change my settings to record in OBS. Forgot to change some of them back to record the rest of the review, so I sat down to put it all together, and from this point in the review onwards there was no sound. So that was great, definitely not frustrating. I definitely didn't do a few swears. So I've had to muster up the motivation to film probably another, you know, couple of hours worth of review. So if you notice some subtle differences quickly, that is why. So apologies for that, and apologies if I said anything really good or very funny in my last go at this, because they are now lost to time. But it is what it is. What can you do? Rather it be this than an actual reaction, I guess, because that would just be lost forever. So at least it is something where I'm just talking to the camera rather than, you know, a first time reaction kind of deal. So I guess, you know, every cloud. Anyway, so for this next section, we're going to be talking about characters. As always, I've kind of narrowed it down to like the main casts, obviously, and also some, I think, major supporting characters or one-off characters of note to me that I want to kind of talk about, any ones that really stand out over the course of the season. So we're not talking about every single character to have appeared in the season, because honestly we would be here all day. So I'm sure you can understand why we've narrowed it down a bit, and hopefully I haven't missed anyone super important, or like, why did I not talk about this person? I don't want to pull the Buffy season 3 review where I forgot to talk about Wesley. But luckily, Wesley ended up coming back and being quite significant in the Buffyverse, so I still had more chances to talk about him. So that worked out well. But yeah, I do apologise if I've missed out someone that seems to be blatantly obvious. And yeah, it may happen, but hopefully not. I feel like I've covered everything. I went through all the episodes back and, looked up guest cast lists and everything to try and write down some meaningful characters. Anyway, we might as well get started. And who else should we start with but Angel himself, of course, the main man of the hour, man of the many hours, I guess, based on how long this review is probably going to be. We'll see. So yeah, it feels weird getting to talk about these characters, having seen in a way the end of their journey and see where they end up, at least in a live action sense, and these actors portraying them sense. But yeah, quite the journey we've been on with Angel as a character. He's one of the ones that we've followed from the very beginning of the Buffyverse to the very end, which I'm not sure. There aren't many characters who are in the first episode of Buffy and the last episode of Angel, right? Is it only Angel? I guess it would be. That's kind of nuts that he was just always there. But I do think, over time as the character progressed and as David Boreanaz got better and better, and got his own show and everything, I think it's been really justified in how much untapped potential there was for Angel as a character when he was just the love interest on Buffy for the most part. And then obviously they did the Angelus thing, him coming back from the dead and all that kind of guilt he was feeling, and the eventual kind of breakdown of his relationship with Buffy that led to him leaving, Sunnydale and coming to LA, and everything that's happened since, all the crossovers, all the drama with, Cordelia and Fred and Connor and Wesley and all of that kind of going down and leading us to this moment. But again, I've really enjoyed seeing Angel grow over the years, and I doubt they could have imagined exactly everything they had in store for Angel as a character when we first met him, just a recurring character on Buffy season 1 to where he ended up, and all how much they delved into his backstory and stuff. I'm not sure they ever really imagined just how far they would go with it. Obviously you look at what happened to Darla in Buffy season 1 and stuff. I'm sure there would have been very different plans if they'd known. But it's just been so cool to see where he's kind of ended up, and to see, his big struggle with the whole Wolfram Hart thing this season, and kind of losing his way a bit, kind of losing faith in, trying to make a difference through Wolfram Hart. Is that still fighting a losing battle? Is there still really no way of making any significant difference or winning in any way? The powers that be seem to just be unreachable, the senior partners. Just this mysterious entity that seemingly can't be touched. So to kind of see Angel really struggle with that this season, and then kind of go on, put back on the right path when Cordelia came along after he was struggling for a bit, and then seeing him still kind of get frustrated about that, but he's still kind of learnt from, I guess Cordelia's teachings in a way, and learnt from what happened earlier in the season with his struggles. And he's like, how can I use this? I like that we really saw him adapt, I think, in this season. And we've had to see him on multiple occasions kind of adapt to new situations just by being a vampire who's lived for hundreds of years. He's had to change and adapt with the times, fit in new environments and new styles, new clothes, new music, all of that. He's kind of had to go through all these decades and becoming Angelus again, and coming back to being Angel, and Angelus again, and Angel again. All of that kind of manoeuvring his existence. So to then see him face an adaptation again, trying to adapt to a life with Wolfram Hart, and actually actively really struggling with that, and kind of losing his way a bit with it on multiple occasions. The fact that he still finds something that he's having a trouble adjusting to after, hundreds of years of being alive and having to adjust to, the times as they change. I think it's really interesting that he's still having to struggle with those adjustments, and that really leans into his, I guess, he's always going to be fighting the good fight, and that's always going to be going on. Maybe there's no end to that fight, but he's always going to get back up and keep going anyway. So I like how that kind of just ties into the mere foundation of his character being, this ageless, immortal vampire who's been around for a while and seen all sorts of changes in the world and in himself, and in others. So I like that the core of his character and just like the idea of Angel as a character can still be tied into, him fighting the good fight again and again. And I think seeing Angel just unwaveringly stick to that and sometimes use his struggles with adjustments to his advantage, like, going undercover with the Circle of the Black Thorn and everything. He could use him struggling with the Wolfman Heart stuff as like a front and a cover to try and fool the others that he was turning evil, as a means of getting in, and trying to make a difference. So, I like that we've seen Angel really turn it into a weapon of his own instead of letting himself just suffer, as he often does. He kind of blames himself for a lot, and he's always seeking this quest for redemption. And I think he would just stand there and take a lot of the beatdowns that he got because he feels like he deserves it and stuff. So to see him actively kind of make a weapon of that and fight back and say no this season, particularly near the end, as they kind of all gathered up to fight the Circle, it's really nice to see that, because he came from someone who, when we first saw him, this tortured vampire with a soul, with a lot of redemption to earn and repenting to do. To see him, I think he found some sort of peace with that in the end, and there is an acceptance that maybe it's just not going to be something that he will ever achieve, but he's going to keep trying anyway, because that's what he does. That's who he is now. So even if he doesn't fulfill the Shanshu prophecy or anything like that, or it's all actually about Spike, I think it gets to a point with Angel where that doesn't matter anymore. That felt like the quest he got at the end of season 1. Like, okay, this is what I can work towards now. This is my motivation. This is what I'm building up to. But I think, 4 seasons later, as we come to the end, it's just so ingrained in him to just keep fighting anyway. I feel like that became less important to him, and the only reason it then kind of became a bit more important was Spike showing up and being potential competition, and those two just turn into 12-year-olds when they're around each other. So that's kind of what got brought up for him again. So I really enjoyed seeing Angel's growth through that, and I think David's been fantastic throughout. And while he's had those kind of really deep, darker moments in this season, like the last couple of episodes, losing Cordelia, his reaction to Fred's death and everything, there's been some lighter moments to him as well that I've really enjoyed. His relationship with Nina. I mean, Nina's, well, you can talk about Nina later, obviously, but she's fine. But I like seeing him kind of try and manage and negotiate a different kind of relationship again, even if it did kind of go back to an episode all about Buffy. And then it didn't really end well for them, but was it ever going to? Because that's the fight that he has to fight. But I did really enjoy seeing that side to him through trying to maneuver a different relationship. Obviously, Smile Time and him becoming a puppet and stuff, absolutely hilarious, and I like that side to him as well. Why We Fight, for better or worse, having that episode around to really kind of show, his sins of his past, and, so many things have come back to haunt him. It felt like, Why We Fight almost feels like Somnambulist from season 1, but like 2.0. And instead of Hawkeye coming back and haunting him, it's someone else that he's sired when he had a soul, and like something different in regards to that. So I like that. I guess it again ties into you can do as much as you want in the present day to fight this fight and try and redeem yourself if you still feel like you need to. But it just feels like there's always going to be someone that you wronged in the past when you were Angelus, or sometimes even when you were Angel and you had a soul and you sided this guy. There's always going to be something maybe that you've thought long since would have wrapped itself up, but it's now come back to haunt you. We had Hawkeye, we had the guy from Why We Fight, we had the guy in, I think it was Heartthrob. Was that the first episode of season 3? That kind of coming back to haunt him again as well. You know, sleeping with Darla, and then hello Connor, you know, all of that kind of stuff. It's just the inevitability, I guess, of Angel's character, and I've really enjoyed them exploring that, and I think they really delved into that quite well this season. But they had some light-hearted moments as well, you know, like the puppet, like seeing him try and have a relationship with Nina. Him and Spike, you know, sometimes it got quite deep and quite brutal with those two, but they've also had some very funny moments together and some very light-hearted kind of banter between them. You know, the girl in question kind of being probably the crux of that relationship as well, but also kind of finding an understanding with him. I do think Spike's addition to this season, you know, I think baseline it was just he's a very popular character from Buffy. People will watch if Spike's there. That's probably their core reason for doing it. But I also think it was very beneficial to Angel's character, especially as it turned out to be the final season, to really lean into like exploring the Shanshu prophecy a bit more and seeing exactly what that meant. So when it kind of comes down to that, and Angel's struggling with that, and like, is he the one who's worthy of that the entire season? And then in the end, you know, he ends up just signing his claim to it away, to try and stop the circle and everything. You know, it's the sacrifices that he's always willing to make and the punches he's willing to take, for the greater good. And he's, you know, I've loved seeing him really take those punches with acceptance, I guess, rather than fighting back or just blaming himself. I think he has come to a real realization that probably the seed was properly planted in that scene with Holland. It must have been like season 2-ish probably, when he's like, you know, evil's all around us, that's never going away, that's always going to be there, there's nothing you can really do to fight that or stop that entirely. You know, I think to see him just come to terms with that and accept that by the end, he's just like, that's always going to be there, the best I can do is kind of maneuver around it and, you know, take it a day at a time in this fight. And I've really enjoyed seeing that acceptance with him and that growth, you know, considering he's already quite old in the grand scheme of things. You know, I feel like we have still ourselves as an audience witnessed Angel mature significantly, you know, in just how his mindset is about things, and he's not going to be like, well, this is my fault now that this has happened to me, you know, I deserve this. It's kind of more so become, this is the way the world is, there's nothing I can really do about it, but I can help if I can. I've liked seeing him learn that, and it, you know, harsh lesson to learn. And I think, you know, in a similar way, kind of Lorne went through a similar journey this season and kind of realising the way the world really is and how Angel's world really is. And, you know, Lorne at least had the luxury of walking away from that, whereas Angel, that is just him and his existence and, you know, his place in the world. So I think that was a really cool journey to have seen him, you know, go on. And just the kind of strength of him to go through everything he's gone through and lost everything he's lost, still get back up and keep fighting. You know, let's get to work. It was the last line he ever said, last line of the show. And that kind of sums up his character, I guess, perfectly in that final line that he gets just before it cuts to black and we don't see what happens next. That is how it always will go for him. You know, we first see him in Buffy as like this mysterious figure, you know, always keeping to the shadows, being very vague about things and talking to Buffy about like the harvest and all this, like, ooh, what's it going to be? What's going to happen? Ooh, very mysterious. Ooh, I'm attractive and mysterious. Ooh. To see him at the end of Angel, standing head on, you know, waiting for these creatures to come. You know, he's stepping out of the shadows by the end to fight the fight. He's not kind of hiding anymore. I think that's a really cool arc for him to have gone on, and I think David did a great job exploring that across the multiple years he got to play the character. And I think we've really seen that Angel was more than deserving to have like his own show, and to see the character grow so much deeper through his own show, and to see David's performance just get better and better. It's been so cool to witness that. So I really love Angel as a character, you know, and it is hard for me to think like what would have happened with him if he just stayed on Buffy. We didn't get the spin-off, you know, where would his character have gone? I really do feel like it was for the best for him to get his own show. So, you know, this is where some Buffy side characters who didn't get much to do or didn't really have a place there anymore came to really grow and shine. And Angel was the shining example of that, and the real success story of taking a character who obviously was well liked and popular anyway, I would assume, and then just really pushing the boundaries with him and testing him, putting him through the ringer, and he's still there, standing by the end of it, ready to fight yet again. It's a pretty damn cool, inspirational story for Angel to have gone through. Especially, when you see when he was like human and, Liam the arsehole, and to see, where he stands as Angel in the end. Very cool. And again, a cool justification to have a show named after him and all about him. He was kind of the centre of that debate, about morals and ethics and prophecies and, morally grey stuff. And they certainly still kept to the morally grey side of him, when he killed, is it Drogon? Can't remember if that's how you pronounce his name, Still not great that he did that, right at the end of the show. It's like, oh, Jesus. And, he kind of killed a friend to try and convince, the circle that he was legit and everything. That's pretty damn as morally grey as you can get. So there's still moments of that, and you're still kind of questioning his decisions and stuff, which is very interesting to have him do that after an episode where everyone else is doubting him, and you're like, no, this is obviously going to be a ruse of some kind. But then he does that, and you're like, well, that's still not great, don't get me wrong. So I like that he could probably, even after all this time, still fall on either side of the coin, I guess, or either side of the debate in terms of Angel as a character. And, has he absolved all his sins? Could he ever, even if he tried? Because there always seems to be something around the corner that, comes back to haunt him. A really cool idea for, the development of his character once he gets his own show and stuff. He's come a very long way, and it's been really cool to see that journey. So Angel's fantastic. What a character, and what a performance by David as well. He's just, see him grow and grow is wonderful. And I really like, now that I've finished it, and finished the entire thing, going back and seeing like his early appearances in Buffy, and just like knowing where Angel goes, and like seeing him interact with Cordelia or anything, it's really cool, and very rewarding, I think, going back and seeing like, oh, this is where it all ends up. That is one thing I love about when shows as good as like the Buffyverse shows and everything end. You can go back to the beginning and be like, oh wow, just there is that reward when you know where things end up and where characters end up, unless obviously you don't like the ending. And then it's just depressing to go back to the beginning, like, oh, take me back. But it really feels like this is a completely different Angel to the one we end up with when you like see him interact with Buffy in those early episodes. But also it's still recognisably Angel, and that's the success of the arc, is that he's changed a lot and he's been pushed a lot and he's done so many different things, but the core of the character is recognisable throughout, because you've been there for all those changes and you've kind of understood and followed him through all those changes, which can be said, I think, of basically every single character in the Buffyverse, which is why I think those shows have remained and those characters have remained in people's hearts for as long as they have, and will continue to be for hopefully many, many years to come. I've got a friend started on Buffyverse at the minute, and they're on Angel season 2 and Buffy season 5. They've kind of gotten there in a matter of months. They've probably binged it and really gotten into it. So I like that I can even like introduce that now, and Angel's her favourite character. So they ain't seen nothing yet in terms of where Angel's going to go. So it's very exciting to get to share that, and I think seeing Angel as a character grow and everything that happens in his own show is a big example of why that's so rewarding, and why it's great to watch them both side by side as well. Once you get to the right point to kind of watch them with the crossovers and stuff, Buffy and Angel, I think they really complement each other well. I can understand having a preference, and I can understand if maybe one show just isn't for you, and you lean towards watching one and you don't necessarily care about watching them crossover or anything. But I do think they complement each other quite nicely. So yeah, Angel, he's great. Oh, that was, 20 minutes talking about one character? That's great. Well done, Liam. So who should we go for next? Who next? Wesley. Let's talk about Wesley. It makes me sad to talk about Wesley, but yeah. He had quite a dark journey up to this point, like seasons 3 and 4 and everything. But, with the whole memory wipe at the end of season 4, it kind of gave Wesley the chance to properly fit back into the team, without everything that happened with Connor kind of hanging over all their heads, and Angel, who'd already forgiven Wesley for what happened, being anyone who remembers, it doesn't then influence what would happen with Wesley. And the fact that Wesley still ends up getting those memories back, and you see like the guilt he feels over it, I do think is a really interesting thing for them to have done. So I wasn't sure if they would properly get their memories back by the end of the show. Certainly by that point in the season, it was so late, it was like episode 18 or something, wasn't it? I was like, if they're going to get their memories back, it probably would have happened a lot earlier. But the fact that it still happened, or at least it happened for Wesley. I don't know if everyone else ever got their memories back properly. I don't know if like Gunn or anyone remembers Connor in the end. But I like that if anyone needed to get their memories back of that situation, it should probably be Wesley. So yeah, that was really cool that, they didn't shy away from the things that Wesley had done in the end. And again, it's just one of those things, something from your past coming back to haunt you. Should you redeem for it? Are you already redeemed for it? That's what a lot of these characters will go through, obviously, in the show. So Wesley was another huge example of that. And I liked seeing him find some sort of comfortable place in Wolfram and Hart, doing what he does best with the books, kind of going back to that side of things, seeing his growing relationship with Fred was something that I was very much rooting for. So to see that get a bit of development, until what happened, that was great from just an audience point of view. As someone who wanted to see that get explored and developed, I was very happy to have gotten that side of Wesley as well, just to see a shred of happiness before it's cruelly, awfully ripped away from him. To really see him broken down by what happened to Fred. And then when Illyria comes along, his relationship with her, he feels an almost loyalty to her because she looks like Fred and she's using Fred's body. And his kind of struggles with like showing her the ropes almost. And again, the boundaries that comes with that and the potential to cross them. And I think that, a creature like Illyria, who does learn to care for Wesley and does have concerns and mourns him in the end, I think that is testament to Wesley as a character and shows that he can be cared for. And you see so many times how far he is willing to go for people. I think that even though it wasn't actually his dad in the end in Lineage, he killed his dad for Fred. He fully believed that was his father and he killed him. So I think that's a huge testament to, Wesley's ability to care for people, and especially after we'd seen him so emotionally shut off and distant, I think, for the most of season 4, and the fact that, he kind of lost some of those memories probably is why he was a bit more open and sharing again by the end of the show. But everything he'd kind of gone through, I like that he battled through, and again, it's just seeing Wesley in Buffy season 3 and seeing how he is now, was now, if in the chat, it's night and day, but you can still recognise Wesley in all the different stages of him becoming who he ends up being. Alexis is just fantastic, and I think Wesley gets definitely one of the strongest, most powerful arcs in the entire Buffyverse for sure. A lot of people have said that to me over the years, and I do think they're absolutely right. And yeah, you by the end you can't imagine the team without him, I think. And the fact that he filled Doyle's shoes, and we know how I feel about Doyle, we know I love Doyle, to see that Wesley kind of slotted into that role and ended up really doing something different with it, obviously not just replacing Doyle outright and making it his own, and seeing where he kind of grew and changed over these seasons. It was just remarkable, and very satisfying to see these changes and recognise these changes from who he used to be. He was his own worst enemy, lacked any kind of sense of self-confidence, and for better or worse, he definitely kind of owns that by the end of the show. You think of him in The Hole in the World when he like shoots that guy in the leg. I think, is that Hole in the World? It might be Shells. I think it's The Hole in the World. To help save Fred and everything. For better or worse, again, the morally grey is very much still apparent in Wesley at times. But there is still that fundamental care that he has. His concern, thinking Angel may have turned evil and everything. His reaction to getting his memories back with the whole Connor situation. you know, his reaction to Fred's death and everything, how devastating that was for him. And then, you know, for it to come down to it in the end, you know, what I think is really interesting about what they did with Wesley in the end and how they kind of wrap up his character and kill him and everything is that his final scene and like the whole like second half of the episode, essentially, you know, he's spending his last moments and his last scenes in the show and in life with characters that we haven't seen him interact with up until very, very recently. You know, he only really shares his final scenes with that guy who stabs him, the magician-y weird guy, and then Illyria, who, you know, he's only known at that point for like 6 episodes or so, and they're not particularly like super close or anything. They have a very complicated, weird, deep relationship somehow, but, you know, on the surface level, you know, they're not exactly friends. So, you know, you kind of think, oh, they're going to kill Wesley off. How would you do it? You're like, oh, well, you know, you want him to maybe die saving one of the other team, or die saving Angel, or, you know, Gunn's there for him when he dies, or Lorne's there for him, or Spike's there for him, you know, someone that he has known for a while. But, you know, he ends up technically in Fred's arms, so he has kind of known her for a while. But it is Illyria, you know, putting on that show, and the fact that he, knowing it's his last moments, he's like, you know what, screw it, you know, it's going to bring me some kind of comfort in the end if this is my last chance to see Fred again. You know, lie to me. And he, you know, lets Illyria become Fred again, which is, you know, he'd been so adamantly against. And it's just this character that he hasn't known that long in the grand scheme of things compared to the other characters. And yet I think those scenes still hit so hard because of obviously Illyria's ties to Fred and to Wesley. But someone could have told me like how it would play out and stuff. Like, Wesley basically dies in the arms of a complete stranger, but also not a complete stranger because it's Fred's body and she's betraying Fred, and you know, they've built an understanding, if maybe not they know each other particularly well, and I'd be like, oh, you know, I kind of wish I'd have someone there, you know, when the reveal of Cordelia dying and everything, you know, Angel's there for that, and when Doyle dies, you know, Angel and Cordelia are there for that, and Fred has Wesley there for her when she dies. So, you know, it's an interesting kind of parallel there, that when Wesley dies, Fred is there cradling him, but it's not actually Fred and everything. That's the tragedy of it. I do like that. But the fact that those scenes are still so powerful and still hit home very strongly, again, it's just testament to our love and care for Wesley as a character. I know not everyone loves Wesley. I get some comments of people who really don't like Wesley. But, you know, for the most part, I would say, at least in the community that watched my reactions, you know, Wesley is very well loved. And myself included. He's one of my favourite characters in Angel. I think he does get one of the best, if not the best, arc in the Buffyverse. But the impact that death has, and, you know, it's just Alexis, just his portrayal of it, you know, how softly he kind of bows out, considering, you know, the brutality of Wesley's arcs, the couple of prior seasons. You know, it's still somehow an incredibly fitting way for him to go, and even the fact that I was spoiled on it and I knew it was coming for about a year before it happened, you know, I knew that Wesley died at the end. The fact that it still hit the way it did, you know, I think that shows what a substantial loss Wesley would have been if, you know, I know if the show had continued and been renewed, Wesley wasn't going to be killed off, so, you know, it wouldn't have happened. But, you know, you kind of, now that it did happen, you can imagine like a future Angel season 6 or something without Wesley. You know, it feels odd. You know, it's kind of like the absence of Cordelia in season 5, which I feel is very much felt. And one thing that I think really holds it back from being superb throughout, you know, Wesley kind of has earned that status, I think, of being, you know, such an iconic part of Angel's team. And, you know, his death is so tragic and everything, and such a standout moment in that finale, which I think is an impeccable finale as it is. You know, just how far Wesley has grown and changed is incredible. And I've loved getting to witness that over many years, starting with, you know, Buffy season 3. Who would have thought when he racked up in, you know, was it Bad Girls, I think is the episode he first showed up in, to where it ends in Not Fade Away with him. An amazing journey, an amazing character, and I've really enjoyed what they continue to do with him in season 5 overall. They've again taken everything from him in season 3 and to an extent season 4, completely broken man, and then they took his world all over again when they killed Fred, and seeing him kind of try to bounce back from that and then still lose his life. A very tragic story by the end, but a very powerful one, and I think Wesley is very deserving of the praise that his arc gets throughout the Buffyverse, and Alexis was just phenomenal. And another amazing character in a sea of them, but Wesley still kind of stands out amongst some of the best characters, I think. Then let's talk about Gunn. I feel like I talked about Gunn quite a bit. I think it might have been in my Not Fade Away reaction. I feel like I've said a lot about what I feel about Gunn as a character anyway at the end of the Not Fade Away reaction, but I think his arc and everything and his role in things is probably quite underrated, I would imagine, because I do think he's a genuinely great character, and I've loved seeing the kind of subtle changes with him. And this season, seeing him prior to this be the muscle, struggling to kind of find a place in the group because I think the writers just couldn't find a place for him either, and then making that kind of part of his story. He gets all this lawyer know-how and everything, starts wearing all the suits. He's kind of seemingly found a place for himself, and he's happy with that, because even from when we first met him, he was just part of this group of vampire and demon hunters on the street. It didn't seem like a solid home or foundation or network for him, especially when he had to then kill his own sister. So to see him kind of find that place for himself, but then lose it again with what happens to Fred, and then he sheds the suit, and building up to that, his lawyery knowledge was kind of fading a bit, and in his desperation to get some self-worth back, because I really think he just thinks so little of himself, and that was his big driving force, that insecurity, which in itself is very sad but relatable. Gunn, that then drove some events forward that happened to get the sarcophagus in, which then ultimately took Fred's life, but obviously Gunn could have never known that was going to happen. He thought, it's going to be someone else, so he still might have been aware that someone was going to get hurt, but he did it anyway. So again, there's still that morally grey being injected into these characters, but then the way he punishes himself for that later on stays behind in that tortured dimension-y place, and he stops wearing the suits and everything, kind of dresses normally again. Just he doesn't have that view anymore, he doesn't fit in anymore. So I guess the fact that he's potentially mortally injured at the end, so he's probably going to just drop dead in a few minutes after the end of Angel anyway, so I feel like maybe Gunn also technically dies. Maybe that's a release for him in a sense, but that's also sad in itself to think of that, because I do think he thinks so little of himself. But I've loved kind of seeing that subtle change and growth in him, and again he's kind of become this integral part of Team Angel. You think of when he thought Angel would never be his friend to how they actually ended up being friends. I do think he hasn't had as big of an arc in the forefront, I guess, because he hasn't been given the screen time and the focus that others have, so I think his arc and his change hasn't been quite as obvious, but there has been this clear change and this clear maturity in him, I think, as time has gone on. And again, he's just another thing. I couldn't imagine Angel and that team without Gunn in it. So he was just a really great kind of addition to the team. J. August Richards was fantastic, especially when they gave him the material to shine. And I've really enjoyed his character's kind of journey and the struggles that he went through in season 5. When they gave him that focus, it really did work out well. And it was really cool, compelling stuff with him. And again, just kind of pushing him in that way. But when it comes down to it, he will be there for you. He will be that team player that you need. Very reliable. And I guess some of that reliability is why he was taken for granted a bit, and maybe kind of just became the muscle in the team, in the middle of seasons of the show, because he was just that kind of reliable force to fall back on. So to see that then be like challenged and tested and picked apart was really cool, and a really nice exploration of someone that may not get all the big stories and definitely isn't like the main character of the story or anything, but they can still be the hero of the story. I think that's a message that I would take away from Gunn's character and his journey, particularly this season, and that you can always like find your place in the end, and then even if that's not right for you, you are still you. And I think in Gunn's case, and I wish he would know that and realise that, at a base level, that's a pretty damn good thing to be, even if he is the muscle, or even if he's not Mr. Lawyer Man anymore, or even if, he has made mistakes. Being Gunn is pretty damn good, I think, at a base level. So, I like that kind of message that you could take from his character. So I've really enjoyed Gunn a lot as well, since we met him near the end of season 1 up till now. He's always been a reliable kind of team player. And when they did properly delve into his character a bit and explore that, it's always been great. I do wish they'd lent really more into the whole guilt over killing his sister and stuff. It feels like that was a missed opportunity to really delve into that. But, we've got a few snippets of it here and there. But still, really great character yet again. And then we go to Spike. Let's talk about Spike. A really fun addition to the season, an unexpected one in a way, given how Buffy ends. And, I think that was a nice ending for Spike at the end of Buffy. But I do like what they did with him this season. I do think his return from the dead was justified in how it kind of influenced some other characters as well. I think Angel very much benefited from Spike's presence in this season. I really enjoyed, his bond with Fred. I thought was really nice as well, and very much needed to establish in those earlier episodes, especially because, Fred dying later on and stuff also gave Spike some personal stakes in that fight to get him involved. It was cool to quickly lay some foundations down. Like, if Spike was going to stick around and be part of this group and properly fit into the show, he needed to have connections that went just beyond like a love-hate relationship with Angel. So I'm glad they established that fairly quickly. And he's just so charismatic as it is, and James is just so good in the part. He can just fit in anywhere really. I can see why they floated the idea of like having him be in Firefly. So yeah, it was great to kind of continue that journey with him, like the mystery of like how he was back and what was going on with like his like ghostly forms almost in those early episodes, and how that tied into Lindsay's return and everything. That was all done quite well. And again, he had his past come back to haunt him in the sense, that potential slayer who had these mismatched memories of who'd actually done her wrong, but that was kind of then projected onto Spike, because of like previous Slayer's memories and stuff. But there's almost some believability to it because of how Spike used to be. So it's just, don't be a vampire in the Buffyverse. Basically, your life's just not going to be fun. Just like, oh god, you can't just go to Disneyland or anything. Not when you're a vampire. I suppose not when you're a vampire anyway, because you just burn in the sun. But but yeah, he brought a much needed levity to the season at times, a lot of humour to it that was definitely needed without Cordelia being around. He kind of somewhat filled that gap in his Spike-ish way. It's not exactly the same as having Cordelia around, but it needed like a character who could provide some laughs and got the focus that Lorne could have filled that role, but they just never gave him screen time for whatever reason. So bringing Spike in makes sense as well from that point of view. I like what he kind of brought to the dynamic with that, and how he just kind of grows to also just fight the good fight. Very wrapped up in the Shanshi prophecy, of course, and wrapped up in Buffy like Angel gets as well, and like the Girl in Question stuff. But in the end, he still just is willing to do good because it's what needs to be done. So you're just seeing that growth in his character from the Spike we first met, and to when he got his soul back in Buffy season 7 to now. He knows when to step back and when to back away, when to not go out all guns blazing. At times, he's still not perfect with that, but you think how he used to be, and then seeing him in this, he chooses not to contact Buffy, like just let her believe that he's dead in those earlier episodes. All of that, I think, showcases his growth really well. And yeah, he just slotted into the team seamlessly. His relationship with Angel, I think there was a bit too much dominance of that and a few too many episodes about just the two of them in the season overall. But, you can't deny how fun it is to have those two together and just bicker a bit more. And, by the end, I think you do see a slow kind of understanding come between the two of them. They're kind of saying, we're always going to be monsters. And, fighting together to try and save Fred, realising that they can't. And, they final shot of the show that they're standing together after all that history between them, and like seeing the flashbacks to that history in this season as well was really fun and interesting to kind of see them be on like the same side of things in the flashbacks with the girl in question, to now like after a long and winding road, they are capable of being on the same side of the fight again, and actually go a few minutes without trying to kill each other, which for them is a huge step forward and a huge development. And I've really enjoyed seeing the dynamic between the two of them kind of grow and change a bit. Not massively, but still there was some clear development and understanding there, I think, across the season. So I really enjoyed Spike's presence and what he kind of brought to things. Definitely injected some much needed lightheartedness and humour into the season when required, without Cordelia around. But he also provided, some really nice, grounded, powerful moments as well. His little speech, like, hole in the world, feels like we ought to have known. That's such a good line. And James is just so good at delivering all aspects of the character. And, if a scene requires humour or if it requires a bit of drama and stuff, Spike will deliver. He'll always be there to do that. So I've really enjoyed bringing him on board. I think it was, a very good decision in the end. And I think it probably was a bit of a stunt casting and a get for viewers. Buffy's finished, but you can still see Spike on Angel, come and watch. But I also think there's some justification for it, and I think from a story perspective it added a lot, and it was kind of a good kind of foundation to maybe continue to explore some themes left off on Buffy, like what is Buffy doing next with the girl in question, or in Damage, and exploring like the potential slayers. And we had a few appearances from Andrew and stuff. That was a good way of continuing some of what Buffy was exploring and making that world still feel lived in and feel like those characters are still going even though we're not seeing them on screen. That was a cool way of doing that. And yeah, just a reliably good character and a very charismatic character to have around. You're always going to have a lot of fun when Spike's on screen. So it was great to kind of have him be part of the season as well. And I do think they left him and his character in a an even better ending than he got in Buffy, which I already really loved, his sacrifice at the end of Buffy. But that one, to see him fight with Angel and that crew, he's kind of found a new place, and I think he definitely seems a bit more welcome and belonging in that group than like the Scoobies, because they always kind of struggled with Spike at times. It was kind of nice to see him find a team that I think he really can be a part of and be comfortable in all the time. Fighting alongside Angel, who he's obviously struggled with a lot in the past. That was just really cool and a really great thing to be able to do with his character and get that extra year with him to bring him into Angel. Kind of an inspired choice, really, and I do think they kind of leave him on a better ending overall for his character, an even better ending, I should say. So yeah, Spike's a really great addition to the show this season. I've really enjoyed him. And yeah, very much a staple of the Buffyverse, obviously. And I like that outside of just his one appearance in season 1, it's cool that he still kind of got to make a mark on Angel as a show properly as well. So that was all very well and good. Fred. Oh, where's my pillow? Hang on, I've got it here. There she is. Okay, it's fine. I'm over it, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, is there much more to say about Fred than hasn't already been said multiple times? Probably not. But we know I love Fred. I'm still so sad that was how things ended for her. Brutal, awful, horrendous, powerful, yes, but fucking hell. Jesus, that episode wrecked me. you know, I loved how they continued to explore her strength coming off the back of season 4 with the whole Jasmine arc and her going off on her own, seeing her kind of find this place and really thrive in the Wolfen High environment, you know, doing all her sciencey wizardry stuff that she could do and just seemed so skilled at and adept at. That was great. You know, again, exploring the relationship between her and Wesley was lovely. And I'm glad we kind of got a little taste of that before it was cruelly snatched away from me. Her friendship with Spike I thought was also really nice. However brief it was as well, you know, I liked the scene with her and Harmony when they seemed to maybe be friends, but then they did absolutely nothing with that after that episode. But still, you know, that was a fun little dynamic to explore. You know, I just, there's just a level of comfort to that character for me that I just really enjoy, and always have. You know, she's a cinnamon roll, what can I say? I really do adore that character, and you know, there's a strength to her, but also that kind of warmth and kindness and comfort that comes from just seeing her around. So to see how brutal and painful her death was, and to see what happened to her, and see her soul be completely destroyed, you know, is just absolutely devastating. But you know, the Buffyverse as a world just isn't very fucking fair. So I guess it's just the harsh lesson that we need to learn, isn't it? But yeah, I do feel like I've said so much about Fred in the past, and I'm sure if you're watching these reviews, I imagine you've watched at least a few of my reactions to Angel, so I think you probably do know how I feel about Fred. A bit of a broken record at this point, but just really great character. I think Amy Acker is just such a fantastic actress. And, you know, for me, you know, even with Illyria kind of taking over by the end and having that big dominant presence and being, you know, a much larger than life character, you know, for me that doesn't make her necessarily more interesting or, you know, more fun, because I think there's a lot of layers to Fred. And it was just the fact that sometimes the show didn't explore them, and much like Gunn, I think sometimes Fred could be relegated to the background a bit. You know, same with Lorne. But I think when they gave her the chance to shine, she really did. And yeah, just a real level of warmth and comfort that always radiated off the character to me, and I just enjoyed that presence for her. You know, and the fact that when she was dying, she was determined to not be afraid, and, you know, she'd go out kicking and screaming. You know, that raw strength to her that showed like why she survived in Pioneer for 5 years. You know, I'm glad the show rarely forgot that side of her. And you know, right up until the end, she was like a fighter, and you know, she was always thinking of others. You know, talk about her parents and stuff. She didn't want to be the victim. She didn't want to be afraid. I love that she kind of kept that mentality. And you know, just I really bought into the care that the others had for her. You know, seeing them all just there like fighting to save her because they all loved her that much. You know, I really bought that. I think they sold that very well over like years of us getting to know and love the character. I really do think it was justified, like how far they were all willing to go to try and save her. And then, you know, when it comes back to see her like flashbacks with her parents, and to see Illyria pretend to be Fred on multiple occasions, you know, the cool one with like Fred's parents, and then with Wesley when he was dying, you know, even though she died like 7 episodes before the end of the show, they still managed to kind of give the character a legacy just in those 7 episodes, and she's still kind of, you know, they managed to achieve, I think, an emotional reaction of seeing a character again just mere episodes after that they died, in a way that I think some shows would hope to achieve if they brought a dead character back after years in like a vision or whatever. You'd be like, oh my god, it's them again. You know, years after this character was killed off, they're back in like a ghostly vision or something. Very emotional, very powerful. The fact that they kind of achieved that same level of like, holy shit, powerfulness, if you will, at least from me, just mere episodes after we saw her die, you know, I think that's testament to the character and the performances and the writing and everything. So yeah, I love Fred. I'm still sad that things ended the way they did, but you know, can't change it, sadly, otherwise I would. But yeah, I love that character so much. Definitely one of my favourite in the show, and one of my favourites in the Buffyverse entirely. So yeah, I just love, like, they never failed to forget Fred's strength, I think, at the right moments. So that was a really, you know, essential core part of her character. And yeah, just her absolute refusal to be afraid and be the victim in the end. You know, that's a kind of level of bravery I would love to aspire to. Like, I'm terrified of death. I'm terrified of dying. So if I could even be half as brave as Fred was, facing that awful guttural end, she's literally being like, her insides are being like scooped out and melted down. She can still face it like that. You know, that's pretty fucking incredible, if you ask me. As is her character. So yeah, I love Fred. I'm very sad that her story ended the way it did. Lorne. Let's talk about Lorne. Lovely Lorne. You know, often a source of like comic relief and lightheartedness, singing and joy throughout most of his run. This season was the season that like dragged him down and like showed him the harsh realities of life. And I, you know, while that's a very tragic way for his arc to go, I really liked what they did with that, and to see him just become this broken man to a point where he's like, I can't be part of this world anymore. You know, I can't do this and be with this world. You know, I'm walking away. Don't come and find me. Don't contact me. This is it. You won't try and, you know, you won't find me. Don't come looking. The fact that everything that he'd seen and the realities of this world had just completely destroyed him. You know, kind of at times his own powers work against him. And he, you know, he didn't ask for that, but that's like harsh, cruel reality of the world. You know, like when he sensed what was happening with Fred as she was singing to Wesley and everything. It's just brutal, kind of, to see the light kind of taken from him. He's just completely worn down by the end. You know, him killing Lindsay, such a huge shock. It's kind of the final blow, quite literally, I guess, to a sort of innocence with Lorne that's kind of always been there. But you see quite early on in the season with Life of the Party, like this lifestyle of his, like living this life with Wolfram and Hart stuff, completely wearing him down and destroying him, and you kind of see that properly manifest in Life of the Party and how much of a struggle it is for him at times, and how much is on his plate and the pressure that he's under. And he just kind of, you know, it crushes him by the end. It completely caves in, and, you know, not only destroys him physically like in Life of the Party did, but emotionally he's just completely wrecked by the end of the show. And that spark's kind of been snuffed out, and maybe there's hope that it gets reignited at some point later on down the line. But just as the ending of this show, you know, it's a real tragic way for his arc to play out, but I do think it was a really powerful one. I like that they took that choice to end such a beacon of light and hope throughout most of the show since he's been around, and just completely like snuff that out. You know, I like that Lorne became a victim of this lifestyle in this world without dying. You know, that there are different ways you can be killed by this life and this fight without losing your life. And I think Lorne is kind of what, you know, a definition of that and an example of that. And I do think that was portrayed really well. And, you know, Andy was brilliant in that part. Super underused and undervalued, I think, for a lot of the time. But when he did get those moments, you know, he was always great, and always reliable. And yeah, a really interesting, powerful arc for him by the end. Again, it's one of those really depressing things when you're like, you see, first time you see Lorne, he's there singing I Will Survive, all happy and like cheery. You see him like, good night folks, just walking out all defeated and deflated after killing someone, you know. It's a real harsh truth, I guess, and a harsh reality, you know. His weapons prior had been like when he like that super high note and everyone was like, oh, and it was absolutely hilarious and it killed me every single time he did it. And then when it comes down to in the end, like his final, you know, way of stopping someone, just shooting Lindsay point blank in the face. Not in the face, but, you know, shooting him in point blank. You know, on Angel's request, just pulling a gun out. There you go. That's it. Bye. You know, there's no theatre and theatrics to what he does anymore, because it's just all been sucked out of him and drained from him. And to see somebody who had such a zest for life and existence when you first meet him, to see that that's how that ends up for him. Very sad, but very poignant, and I think there's some truth in there as well at times for people, sadly. I love that tragedy. You know, it's a very twisted way of saying it. But it's not like he's like dead, so it's not, you know, as brutal as like Fred or whatever, but it's still very sad. and an amazing character, who I wish we'd seen more of. But what we did get of him was wonderful, and I like the tragedy of his arc, and killing Lorne off without killing him, I think, was quite a powerful move. So I really enjoyed where his character ended up this season, like, again, being so tested and worn down. And then Illyria is, like, I guess the other, like, main character. Yes. It's always going to be one of those what ifs, isn't it? 'Cause I think for me, Illyria could have become such an incredibly special, wonderful, powerful character if we'd got on there season 6 and they could do all the plans that they had. I imagine if they knew this was going to be the last season, they'd have either not done the Illyria thing or killed Fred off a lot earlier in the season. I imagine they would have killed Fred a lot earlier in the season because pain. So it's kind of a shame that I feel like, for me, she never properly reached the potential she could have done, because we only had like 6-7 episodes with her. A very bold, brave choice and a brave idea, and I do like what they did with Illyria in the end. She got some really badass moments, and I'm glad to have had her featured in the show, but there is part of me that wishes it was just like a separate character altogether, almost, or she could switch back and forth between Fred or something. I feel like that would have been fun, but I guess they just had to kill another female off the show, and then immediately depower her and everything. It's a shame that I think their plans were just ultimately scuppered by the show's cancellation. So, it's not entirely their fault that Illyria as a character didn't have as much time to shine as she deserved to. But what we did get in the end, I think, was really interesting. I loved where her relationship with Wesley ended up going. The kind of callousness in which she inhabits Fred, and actually enjoys playing that part. It's interesting to see her be quite evil and vindictive, but it's not like I know I'm being evil and vindictive. It's just she's like, well, this is interesting. I can pretend to be this dead girl's whose body I took over. That's interesting. She doesn't really understand, I think, like, that's cruel and evil, and the fact that she ends up wanting to learn about that and wanting to adapt and learn those things, wanting to kind of fit into this new world, because there's no way she can go back to her old one because that civilization, everything's completely dead. All she can do is look forward. The fact that she actually seeks that out in the end, we do get a bit of growth for her in the little time we have with her. And the fact she grows to kind of care and mourn for Wesley in the end. It's just like, it would have been so cool to kind of see her, like, when Gunn's saying, Angel will never be my friend, and then we have like another 2.5 seasons where they really explore that could happen. It feels like we got the start of that similar journey with Illyria here, and then just by the end of the show, if it got another few seasons or whatever, she could have been a proper integral part of the team and actually had nice foundations and relationships built with everyone, and it would have been really, really cool. And maybe the comics does achieve that, but there just wasn't the time to, I think, get the full potential out of it for me, in this kind of limited run of episodes that we had with her. But what we did get, for the most part, I really, really enjoyed. I do love that she kind of found a spot in the team in the end, when she like transforms away from Fred and back into herself and like punches that guy's face into nothing. Oh, it's fucking badass. Generally one of my favourite episode moments of probably the entire season is when Illyria does that. And again, Amy is incredible in the part. I love that they got to show her range with that. I love the design of like the blues and everything with her. I do like the concept of this like otherworldly being, trying to adapt to the world and join the team. And it is a shame that we couldn't see it properly explored in another season or so. But regardless, I did really enjoy the different change to dynamic that Illyria brought to proceedings, different kind of level of threat. Can we, she's almost on our team, but she's also not. Can we really trust that? Can we not? I really enjoyed what they kind of did with that and explored with her. It was, a surprising addition, obviously, because I wasn't expecting Fred to be brutally killed off and replaced. But kind of having the complete season stuff, it's like, oh yeah, Illyria. It's like, it's a chapter that feels right to the story almost. Like, Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Illyria. Yeah, it feels like she does belong in the story, but it's just a shame that, you know, oh, the publisher called, the book needs to be 100 pages shorter. Like, just cut that chunk out. There you go. So we only get Illyria arriving, and then the story has to start wrapping up. You know, that's kind of how it feels like. And I do think she has the potential to be a really cool, super, super interesting character. You know, and like have a lot of. Well, she is that, but I think, you know, there's room for her to have so much more depth and stuff. But sadly, you know, at least in live action, we couldn't do that and explore that because it just wasn't time. So you can't really fault them for, you know, introducing her a bit later on in the season, because they didn't know where things were going to go, and they didn't know they weren't going to be getting any more after season 5. But what we did get of Illyria, I did really enjoy. And I do think she kind of finds a place very well, especially with where the story goes with the Circle of the Black Thorn and stuff. You do kind of think, like, how would Fred fit into this? What would she do if she was still around? Like, you know, who would she go after? Would she just have to, like, stay in the lab or whatever? So it's still quite fitting there that, you know, where the story ends up developing and going. I'm sure they'd have found a place for Fred in the end, or she would have just been relegated to the background. So at least with Illyria's presence there, you know, she does have a true purpose, and it does feel like she belongs to the story, given where it ends up. So I do like that, you know, her arrival and everything is kind of very timely and justified. And yeah, a very cool character. I absolutely want like an action figure of her or something, if they like a statue of her, because I think her design's so badass. And again, you know, Amy is incredible in that part, and like switching between her and Fred, phenomenal. So yeah, she's great, absolutely adored. You know, her role in the final kind of part of this story, I just wish we could have gotten more of it, but that's not really Illyria's fault. So yeah, really interesting character, and again, to have such a late addition to the kind of roster of characters in Team Angel, obviously it does help that she's played by the same actress who played Fred, so I think that helps with the transition, like slotting her in. You know, she still kind of does have a place in the show and a place in the team, unbelievably, quite comfortably by the end. I do really like that kind of mini arc she gets of having to quickly adapt and find a place, and while she's not necessarily like friends with any of them by the end of it, she is still standing there fighting with them, which I do like. You know, she instantly, like, her gut is clearly telling her like which side she should be on here, and it was correct. So, you know, I like that, and it would be cool to see where she goes in the comics. In particular, you know, if there was a character that you would say, like, you know, like, keep reading the Buffy comics, keep reading the Angel comics to see what happens next, you know, what character you're most excited to see where the story goes with, I think Illyria would absolutely be my number one choice, and it's not even close. You know, I think there's so much potential for her, so I'd love to see where she continues to go. But Illyria was a really great addition to those last few episodes, even if it came at the cost of Fred, sadly. And then, while not a main character this season, I do want to talk about Cordelia at this point, because, you know, she was around for all the prior seasons, and again, an integral part of Angel and the Buffyverse in general, I think. You know, it's hard to look past all the behind the scenes stuff that's come out since about, you know, how it worked out the way it did, and, you know, they promised and she agreed to come back as long as they didn't kill her, then they killed her. You know, and the fact that I do think season 5 would have been better if Cordelia had been around for all of it, it doesn't negate the fact that, you know, I love that she did at least return for the 100th episode as the Cordelia we know and love. You know, charisma was just phenomenal in that part. You know, she's just effortless in what she brings to the screen, and I love her relationship with Angel, and I loved her kind of getting him back on track when she came back. You know, her watching the video of Doyle, everything with that. You know, I'm glad if anyone had to come back for the 100th episode, I'm glad that Cordelia was who it was going to be. I mean, I know their original intention, I think, was Buffy, but Sarah Michelle Gellar wasn't available or something, I can't remember, but I think that was their first intention, and then they got Cordelia. I think Cordelia should have been the first choice anyway, but yeah, what a character. Again, you think how I felt about her at the start of Buffy, to me, losing my shit and sobbing when she died. You know, again, huge growth and huge change. I have so much love for that character. Can't imagine the Buffyverse without her. And, you know, while it's sad that she died, and it would have been cool to see more of her and have her keep coming back and stuff, and all of that, the fact that, you know, I think her ending is still quite a powerful, poignant one, and I do like that she helps sort Angel's life out a bit, kind of gets things in order, and then she's like, right, I'm off. You know, she spent her last kind of acts as, you know, a being of this world, helping others, which is kind of what she learned to do by the end of season 1 of Angel. She realised how important that was to her, so the fact that that's the last thing she does as well, and, you know, to do it for the man she loves, you know, a very fitting end to the character. And it was great to kind of get to see her one last time as the Cordelia we know and love after season 4 really kind of shat all over charisma and the character, really. It was great that she could go out on a high, at least. If she had to go out, at least she went out shining bright, as she often did. So yeah, I love that character so much. You know, such a 180 on her by the end, you know. I think, if anything, you know, I would kind of grow to appreciate characters like a little bit more. Like, okay, I like you, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this character now. But to go from absolute hatred to absolute unconditional love, like I did with Cordelia, you know, there's no other character like that. You know, I used to hate Andrew, now I like Andrew. But I used to hate Cordelia, now I love Cordelia. That is the, you know, that shows, I think, the impact and the sheer wonderfulness of Charisma's performance and Cordelia as a character, like her growth and change. She really comes to care about others so much, but still care about herself. But I think she grows to care about others just as much as herself. You know, truly everyone is equal in her eyes, because she just cares about everyone as much as her own being. And yeah, there's just so much heart to her character by the end. And I love that she's just unapologetically herself. And I love that she gets those final few moments with, you know, the core characters that she'd shared time with over the years. And then, yeah, that whole, like, last little bit with Angel, that last thing that reveals that she died and everything, and she's gotten back on track. I'm off. You know, and her last line being "You're welcome." It's just so Cordelia, and I love that that's also the title of the episode. You know, she knows that she needs to be thanked, but she's not gonna suck the thank you out of you. She's not gonna force you to say it. Like, well, of course you need to thank me. You know, just. It feels such like a fitting end to that. And yeah, I wish she hadn't died, but also I don't hate her ending by any stretch of the imagination. I do think it's wonderful. If, you know, I'd sooner they did that with her than she's just in a coma for the rest of the show. That's it. You know, the fact that she did get an ending at least, and a good one, I think is very important, and I'm glad we did have that after being such an integral part of the Buffyverse for so long. You know, I couldn't have imagined her not showing up at least at some point in season 5, even though I wasn't sure if she would or not. I'm glad she did, and I'm glad she kind of got to be herself again. I'm glad she got to, you know, show Angel the way, as she so often did, in her own special way. And, you know, just saying you're welcome and off she goes. You know, it's like she doesn't need the gratification anymore. She doesn't need them to say thank you to her face. You know, something Angel did on his own after she was gone. I think that shows how far she's come. She doesn't need that public recognition. She doesn't need someone to tell her how great she is. She knows how great she is. But it's also like, again, it comes back to like Angel's whole fight. Like, it's just what he does now is who he is. And I think Cordelia goes on a very similar journey. And I guess that's kind of why those two ended up being quite closely linked. So yeah, what an amazing character. I absolutely adore Cordelia, and I do I do cherish that we got to see her again one last time, and she got a really nice send-off. So yeah, another incredible character, and I just had to shout her out here because it just feels wrong to not include her with this bunch of people. So yeah, what a character. So glad she got some kind of repentance and justice after season 4. and a really lovely send-off. So for us technically still talk about main characters, we have to talk about Harmony, because she was also in the main credits for the last couple. Again, I've said before, I think Harmony is a character that needs to be used in small doses effectively. And they certainly did that. I think they were very much aware of how she needed to be used. She got one episode kind of centric about her, and the rest of the time it was kind of fleeting appearances in episodes. She didn't have too much to do, but I do think that is how Harmony works best as a character. So I do think they got the balance just right of how to use her in this situation. But I did appreciate her presence, and again, she had some very funny moments in there. She can bring a bit of levity to situations, and it is so bizarre, to have a character who, again, has been around since the start of Buffy and made it all the way to the end of Angel. Maybe actually, I was talking earlier, like, is Angel the only one who's in the first Buffy, but also the last Angel? Maybe Harmony was. I think Harmony's in the first Buffy, so maybe it's two. Either way, I do really enjoy Harmony as a character. I do think she's quite fun. I think Mercedes is really great in the part. Even if there's not much surface to her as a character, which is why she's probably used quite sparingly. I do like that they tackle like the frustration she feels at times in regards to being ignored or not being appreciated and stuff, and that kind of builds up to her getting off with, what was his name? I've written it down somewhere. Marcus. In the finale and everything with that, and how they tie it back with the finale. Harmony being Harmony. Maybe not much loyalty there for her really, but I do think that is kind of an essence of her character they do stick with for the most part. And the fact that she's actually very similar as a vampire to as she is when she didn't have a soul. I guess it says a lot about how awful she was as a human. I don't know. But yeah, she's just around. She, there is some fun to her. I do like the presence she gives, but I am glad that we didn't get loads of it. Because I do think she could have very easily become quite grating and annoying if there was too much of her. But it was fun to kind of have like a background vampire like that who just could bring a bit of chaos to proceedings and a bit of laughter to proceedings at times. And someone who's just been around in the Buffyverse for so long, it does make it really feel like, the world has grown and changed over time, because we've kind of seen that with Harmony. Just being in the background, kind of having a little arc to herself, a little development to herself, much like Jonathan kind of did in Buffy. So I enjoyed seeing her show up, and when she first popped up, and like you're going to see she's Angel's secretary, you're like, oh my god, this is going to be an absolute riot, this is going to be a disaster. And I think that kind of reacts in itself, and the fact that it's funny just that she turns up and she's there, and you just know what it means. And I think in a way that's kind of a positive indictment on Harmony's character, and you just like what she's going to be like, and that is in itself, before she's even done anything bizarre or funny or like, oh, classic Harmony, when she just shows up, you just find it funny. She's like, oh god, this is going to be horrendous. So I think in a way, even though there's not much to her and there's not much meat to the bones, if you will, of the character, you know what she's like and you know what she's going to be about, because something like that can just make you laugh. So I think that's testament to a core strength of Harmony's character at the very least. So I have a lot of fun with her, and I do like that in the end she kind of just betrays everyone still, and that there's still not really a soul there. So it's just her being her, and God knows what she goes off to do and where else she thrives, who she feeds on, whatever. But there's a few instances of her trying. She tries at times to not have like actual human blood or anything. So she does make these positive steps, but ultimately she kind of falls off the wagon and falls back to just being herself, and betraying Angel and everything. So yeah, Harmony's good fun. I do appreciate the presence she kind of brought to this season. Then Lindsay, let's talk about Lindsay. I was very excited when they brought him back, but I think by the end of the season, I don't know, having had time to properly reflect on it, I kind of wish they hadn't. I don't really like where they took his character in the end. I liked the kind of back and forth and the morally greyness of it in the first couple of seasons, and him leaving, and there's a little shred that he might join the team almost, but then it doesn't quite work out because he falls back on like his want for power or whatever. And then after so long away, like why now do you come back? And it feels like we kind of got a satisfying end to Angel and Lindsay's relationship, and just to bring him back to make him all villainous and stuff, and then nonchalantly killed at the end. I don't necessarily mind because I like the shock value of that particular thing, and the fact that he gets so angry about being killed by one of Angel's lackeys, or not Angel himself. He's like, it should be him who kills me. If anyone's going to kill me, it should be him. I like that he gets angry like that, and that feels kind of right. But I don't know, I think the way he was used this season felt very odd. It did kind of feel like Christian Kane doesn't have much availability. So, he'll pop up at the end of an episode to set up his return, then he doesn't actually return properly for a couple of episodes, and then he's around for like the 100th episode, then he gets defeated in that episode, but then we also catch up with him again in his punishment and bring him back, and then he's, helping out, but then he's killed. It felt very higgledy-piggledy, if you will, like his use throughout the season. It felt like he just randomly scattered along the season, wherever they could fit Christian Kane in. Like, I think that kind of just makes it come across as a bit like, yeah. And I'm not sure I liked them just kind of making him the full-blown villainesque by the end. I think they try and do like the moral grey centre with it, of him being like, quite hyped to be part of the team and not wanting to miss out on being part of the team. And then Lorne just kills him. I to an extent I like that side of it. I think more so it's just the fact that he's tied to Eve. I think is what drags it down. Like what do you see in her? So yeah, I feel like I would look back better on Lindsay as a character if he hadn't come back this season. It was very exciting to see him back. It is cool to get a character from those early seasons back. But I don't know if I was thrilled about how his arc played out in the end. I don't know if I really felt like it was worth it. I think, him pretending to be Doyle and stuff, like he's the reason Spike was brought back and whatever. There's something there, but I don't know if I feel like they did enough with that properly. And again, that might be an availability thing, or it might just be they just didn't write it well. I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about it, but overall, I do feel like Lindsay as a character was left off in a better place when he left at the end of season 2. And maybe he should have just stayed there. As nice as it was to kind of see him again, I'm not sure what they did with the character was ultimately worth it, which is a shame. But again, there was some good stuff there. I did like his reaction to Lorne being the one who killed him. I think that was cool. But yeah, I don't think there was enough time to really get into his mindset of like the back and forth of him enjoying being on the team or not. All of that, If we'd had an episode, kind of like we had a few Angel and Spike episodes where they're kind of paired up or against each other, whatever. We had like 3 or 4 of those in the season. If we had one that was like Angel and Lindsay and stuff, really exploring that dynamic again properly, maybe it would have been a bit more justified and we could have gone into his headspace a bit more. But it just felt very haphazardly kind of forced and scattered throughout the season, not very cohesive, I think, which is a shame in the end. But still, a good character, and if this was going to be like the last season and stuff, and bring it up to the 100th episode and stuff, it makes sense that you could bring Lindsay back into it because he was a major character in those early seasons. But I do think he was vastly more interesting and complex and morally grey in those earlier seasons. I think they stripped away a lot of the layers and the complexity to him, I think, when it came to him in season 5, sadly. But one of those things, it is what it is. Nice to see him. Nice to see him go. It makes sense that Angel would want rid of him. But yeah, I don't think there's really time to go there with what they may have wanted to do with him in season 5, sadly. Eve. What is there to say? What is there to say about Eve? They tried to make Eve happen. It just wasn't working for me. I don't know what it was really. It seemed like the writers thought she was better than she was, or more interesting than she actually was. You know, they really felt like they forced her into particularly the first part of the season, and like tried to make you think like she's good, even though she's obviously evil, and then they just reveal that she's obviously evil. I don't know. Not much substance to her again. I don't think she was, you know, in terms of like how she was written, I don't think it was particularly strong. She was a bit boring, I think. She was just kind of there. And I feel like we didn't need her there. You know, give her screen time to fleshing out Lindsay a bit more if you had the chance to do that. Or, even better, keep Lila. Why kill off the good version of this character and then bring in Eve, who's just cardboard? Bizarre that you just, you know, they bring Lila back for the finale of season 4 and then she's off again, released from her contract. Maybe, maybe not. It seems like she can never be released from the contract. So you have the reason to keep her around, but you don't see her. Bizarre. Yeah, I can't say I'm super thrilled with the character. I just think she was a bit boring ultimately. They didn't do much with her to justify how much screen time she had. I feel like, you know, you think of like how much Lorne got to do this season. I do feel like Eve got more screen time than Lorne did, and I'm like, why? You know, no offense to the actress or anything, but I don't think the character was worth it. Very bizarre choice, infuriating at times. Just my eyes glazed over when she was on screen, and the focus is on her, is it? Okay, I'll have a nap. So yeah, not my favourite character, you know, harmless in a way, but when there's so many impactful characters and impactful supporting characters in the Buffyverse, she's never going to stand out. She didn't really stand a chance, and there was just a very odd focus on her, particularly in the early part of the season, which is another reason I think like season 5 is a bit more of like a slow burn with that, because they just always have her show up and have something to say, even though she doesn't really have anything of substance to say, but she's there anyway. Strange choice to have that character there, especially when there were better versions of the character that you'd already introduced and developed over 4 seasons. But there you go. It is what it is. One of those things. Speaking of my favourite characters, let's give a shout out to Nox, I guess. Fuck that guy. Absolutely fuck that guy. But, you know, kind of worth mentioning anyway. 'Cause I like the actor a lot. I do see why they cast the actor, because there is something just likeable about him and kind of almost trustworthy about him in a sense. I mean, I never properly trusted him, but, you know, there's a warmth to the actor. And you can see why, you know, he was in Conversations with Dead People as well in Buffy. And, you know, playing a different part here. You know, I do really enjoy the actor. I do think he's very good. But man, he certainly serves his purpose in a way like Eve doesn't. I do feel like Nox is explored and, you know, does go through some development. You know, you see where it might be going with like a love triangle with Fred and Wesley. And then you get the reveal like he was like a servant of Illyria. I don't know if that was always their plan for him to have been working like a servant of Illyria, like following her or whatever, or if that was just like, oh, we need to start wrapping shit up, I guess. Let's just say he's been like this all along, or they were doing a love triangle thing. I don't know. I don't necessarily feel like they were set up for the whole Illyria connection and stuff. There probably would have been more hints if they'd always been the plan. It didn't feel like that was always the plan for his character, at least for me. But yeah, fuck him. Glad he died. I thought he died when Gunn like smashed his face in, but then he was fine and alive. But then they killed him anyway. So glad he got what he deserved for taking Fred away. But you know, one of those frustrating characters that you're meant to be frustrated and annoyed by. You know, I think he was very successful in that regard, and you know, I think some of that does come down to the actor as well. So you know, I hate the character, but I'm supposed to, and I think that's a success that maybe we didn't quite get with like a character like Eve, for example. So you know, at least I felt passionately about Nox as a character, even if the passion I felt for him was absolute hate and contempt, and you know, just burn in hell, you bastard. So yeah, a decent character overall, you know, as like a supporting character goes. I do like that he ultimately did tie into something at least quite significant, and you know, had a clear journey as a character. Then Nina. I like Nina well enough. I don't think she's particularly exciting by any stretch of the imagination, but at least I think she had a purpose in like what she served to Angel's character and him trying to move on and move forward, seeing if he can have a life for himself, maybe settle down. He's settling down in Wolf and Heart, and that kind of new situation for him. Maybe he could settle down in a relationship of sorts, and making her a werewolf and stuff. That whole journey with her, I liked the introduction episode with that. I liked the back to basics approach with the episode where she was introduced, which I think helped. And it, by its very nature of kind of being a monster of the week introduction for her, we therefore spent a lot of time with her. And they've done that with characters in the past. You think of like, what's the episode called? Untouched, maybe? Unleashed? Oh, no, that's what that episode's called. That was Nina's character's called, wasn't it? It might be Untouched. It was season 2. And I think the woman had like telekinetic powers or something. I think she was like being abused by her dad. They spend an episode really focusing on her and you get to know her quite well, but they never see her again. So the fact that they did like a one-off with like a character like Nina, but then you keep seeing her, she pops up a couple more times. I like that she kind of has a bit of depth to her like that, and it really justifies getting to spend a whole episode with her and getting to know her, because then she becomes sort of significant to Angel's life a bit later on. So I liked her. She wasn't particularly super complex and exciting, but I think the actress and the writing did a good enough job to be like, yeah, I can root for you. You seem nice. And, establishing, her sister and her niece, I think it was as well, giving her that kind of family connection. That was nice. Just as like a potential for like, Angel could have this maybe one day. This is something he could work towards. And I do like that they tried to explore that, and particularly in Smile Time, they're kind of manoeuvring, starting a relationship with each other. I think it's slightly undermined by the girl in question. I think maybe they should have just maybe broken things off before that episode. Maybe it should just come earlier in the season, because I think it's the very next episode after the girl in question that Angel's kind of like, oh, I am committed to you, Nina. Like, here's some tickets, off you go, or whatever. And then they kind of break up. So it feels a bit weird to do that straight after an episode where he's kind of been all obsessed with Buffy again. So that was an odd choice, and I think slightly undermines the development of that relationship. But, I do think it was cool to explore that regardless. And, a likeable enough character that you can root for. I do think she's more so, as there to be part of Angel's story and development rather than be a proper character in her own right. But I think what we do get of her in itself is decent, and, she's nice. And I think to have a character who's just nice and likeable enough can be a refreshing change from just like, this is pure evil incarnate, or like this loads of complexities and stuff, and you don't want to analyse it. It's kind of nice to just have a bit of a breather with Nina and just be like, yeah, she's fine. So that's all very well and good with her. Then I thought I'd give him a shout out in a way, because it's not really him, but Roger, Wesley's cyborg father, the cyborg version of him anyway. I found it interesting as well. I think Fred and Wesley's dads are both called Roger. I think. Is that right? I feel like I remember working that out when I was like researching the names of the characters. Maybe. Either way, I thought it was interesting to kind of get to know Wesley's dad, because the fact that Wesley fully believed that this was his father and fully believed that he killed his father until like they revealed that it was a cyborg or whatever, that must be what Roger's like. That must be what his father's like. So we are technically getting to know his father, and we kind of inferred a lot about what their relationship was like from prior seasons and appearances anyway, on Wesley's behalf. Like, I've Got You Under My Skin, season 1, you kind of see not the perfect relationship that he has with his father, you kind of infer all of that. So to actually see him in this one and get a sense of like his personality and stuff, you kind of see why Wesley just had no confidence in himself growing up, and he's constantly being berated and stuff. So again, it's one of those characters that you hate and are frustrated by, but you're supposed to be, and I think it's very successful in regards to that. And it feels weird to like, oh, I wish he'd actually had died. It feels weird to say like, I wish there wasn't the twist of the cyborg thing, and I wish Wesley really had murdered his father. Feels like a weird thing to say, but it is kind of an anticlimax, I guess, in the end with that reveal. It's kind of like a Ted-esque situation in Buffy. But to actually, even though it's not real, it's real to Wesley and he buys it. So this is what his father's like. To get to know Wesley's father and see him in person and stuff was really cool to do. I'm glad we finally kind of got something like that, because shows like these very often don't show their parents, or if they do, they have very complicated relationship with them and stuff, and the fact that we've gotten so many the kind of inferences about what the relationship was like, and then to get to see a taste of it, even if it was artificial, that was fun, and I'm glad. I do personally quite like it when we have an episode of like a long running show and a character we know for ages, when we finally get to meet a parent. I always quite like that for the most part. I think it can be quite successful. Normally it will be parents come in for like a one-off episode or something, rather than around all the time, like Joyce or something is kind of, I think, more of an outlier. You see Willow's mum once, never again. You never see her dad. You see Xander's dad, I think, in like a dream sequence, and that's about it. You never see Cordelia's parents. It's kind of a rarity that they're around constantly, like Joyce was, for example, until what happened. But I still actually quite enjoy like one-off things like this. So to see Roger in a way was fun, and I did enjoy getting a sense of him, even if he was obviously an arse. But we kind of did assume that. So successful kind of portrayal of the character and the father figure that we kind of knew Roger to be anyway. Then Darla and Drusilla, you might as well pair them up, because it's kind of just flashbacks that we saw them in very briefly. Again, I wish we'd seen more of them, particularly with Drusilla. I think Drusilla was, she was in an episode, but really not for very long, and that was kind of it. But I thought I'd shout them out just because it's the last time I can talk about them, really, and it was good to see them, see what they were up to, what they've been doing in the past, and their kind of connections to everything that went down with Buffy's future boyfriend in the girl in question. So that was fun, and I do like that the last appearances we got of them in the show, obviously not chronologically, but with them there, was a bit more of like a light-hearted affair, and it was like this deep, dark, dismal flashback revealing this tragic past, or them murdering people, whatever. I like that it was kind of a bit more light-hearted and fun. And I'm sure it was fun for the actresses to kind of get to do that, as well as like a send-off to their characters. So, to see kind of where they end up in like particular Darla story and stuff ends up, it was then fun to later see them pop up again in flashbacks. And, it was always a fun kind of, core four group to explore with like Angelus and Spike and Darla and Drusilla. So to get to see them, one last time, however briefly, in the Buffyverse, kind of, a little nod to how important they have been in the past. It was fun to see them again. I'm glad we got a little something with them, and I'm glad it was quite light-hearted. So yeah, that was fun. Then Andrew. Who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought I'd be excited to see Andrew pop up? And a couple of times as well. He was in 2 episodes, I think. So yeah, catching up with him, he's kind of become like a watcher of sorts, I think, now. He's kind of really accepted and put on a lot of responsibility. He's definitely repenting for everything with the trio and stuff in Buffy. And yeah, I liked seeing him kind of negotiate things with like Angel, and then he's kind of like the representative of the Scoobies, if you will, and kind of giving us the exposition of what's been happening since Buffy ended, but also doing it in his very Andrew-esque way, and then seeing his reaction to like seeing Spike's alive and everything was surprisingly wholesome. Because I did enjoy Andrew and Spike when they were paired up in Buffy for a bit. They were quite fun together. So it's another one of those things, I can't believe how I feel about this character, considering how I used to feel about them. Because, season 6 and the trio stuff, big struggle for me. And, therefore I didn't really like Andrew that very much. But season 7 of Buffy did a lot to improve my view of Andrew. And then I was actually quite excited to see him in his couple of occasions in this one. And again, he's quite fun. I do like the energy he brings to things. I do like seeing that he's kind of, putting some of the work in. He's coming quite a long way. And yeah, just kind of living his best life at the minute. So it was fun to see him again as well, and see him pop up. And yeah, there was a lot of kind of, he was basically there just to give us exposition about things and what the world was going, and the girl in question, he was just there to kind of tell us what Buffy was doing, so we didn't have to see it because they couldn't get Sarah Michelle Gellar or whatever. So the fact that you can still quite enjoy his presence, even though it is basically just him spouting exposition, I think that is testament to the entertainment the character can give, and the performance of the actor as well. Is it Tom? Is that the actor's name? I think it's like Tom Lenk or something like that. Who's always been very good in the part. And again, he kind of did slot into the comic relief side of Angel quite well. Inject some more humour into proceedings, especially because his first episode that he was in this season was quite a dark one with damage. So it was, again, needed humour, especially when Spike was kind of drawn into the more angsty side of that story rather than being able to be a bit more comical. So yeah, I liked seeing him pop up again in a few occasions. Again, it just shows like the world is still evolving, even if we're not seeing the characters from Buffy that much. And yeah, he provided a lot of kind of context to how the greater world was working. So I enjoyed seeing him pop up again. He was a lot of fun. And then Dana, who's obviously the potential Slayer. Less so the character herself, but more so what the character stood for as like a continuation of the whole potential thing in Buffy. It was fun to see one pop up on Angel, and kind of almost continue that story and just see the effects that awakening these Slayers could have on people, and getting all these different memories confused from her own abuse, getting that confused with like old Slayers' memories of like Spike killing them or whatever, and she kind of sees Spike as then the person who abused her. It's a really interesting concept, a really cool idea. I like that they kind of explored that. Even if Dana herself, there's not much we know about her as a character, there's not much substance to that. And it is kind of a shame that she's more like a victim rather than just a character in her own right. We don't really get to properly know her. But obviously that's not what the episode's really going for, because it's more so, about Spike in that situation, about Angel in that situation, rather than Dana as a character. She's more like a means to an end. But I think the idea of her is really cool and really interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that side of things, and kind of what her character stood for. Even if the character herself wasn't as much there. She's there to kind of drive the plot forward with the other characters, much like Nina was in a way. But obviously Nina did have a few more layers and a bit more to her. But yeah, I just thought having a potential Slayer show up and continue that story arc was really interesting, and I liked that very much. And then we have Sam Lawson, who I believe is the vampire that Angel sired in Why We Fight, those flashbacks. So again, another example of something from Angel's past coming back to haunt him. And I don't know, I quite enjoyed the character, and I liked the idea of like what happens to a vampire who's been sired by a vampire with a soul, and like what that does to him, and that kind of sent him on a really bad path ultimately, and kind of messed him up in a way, because he couldn't maybe even find any enjoyment from anything. He couldn't find any purpose to anything, and that kind of ultimately drove him against Angel. I thought that was a really cool idea, especially to see how Sam was in the start of the episode. He was trying to just help people and get things done and stuff, and then I think Angel recognised that goodness in Sam, so saved his life and turned him into a vampire, and then all kind of went a bit wrong from there. But I thought the actor was really great in the part. I thought he was a really interesting kind of addition to like the lore of what could happen to a vampire who's sired by someone that was sold, and continuing that debate a bit, I thought was a really interesting addition to the lore. But I also thought the character in his own right was kind of interesting, had a few things to say, even if it has kind of been done before, like with Hawkeye and Somnambulist, like with the guy from Heartthrob. But there was something a bit different. There was a bit of an edge to him. I liked the kind of the danger to him, and like how he put others in danger and like threatened Angel's friends and stuff. There was a threat there, not only physical but personal as well, and how they tied that back to Angel and the flashbacks and stuff on the submarine. I thought that was quite cool how they did that. And I thought he was an interesting enough character for like a one-off thing. I don't know long term if they could have done much more with him, but that's why he was only in the one episode. But I like what he stood for. But I also think, while he informs Angel's character a bit and the lore of like vampires and the Buffyverse in general a bit, I think there's also some interesting substance to him as a character and what he was kind of going through, the struggles he was kind of facing. So I thought that was quite good. And then Dr. Sparrow, who is the guy I think Gunn made the deal with, to kind of get the sarcophagus and stuff in, which obviously led to Fred's death and everything. Don't know how much was to say about him, but again, he's one of those characters that I thought I'd give note to, because I thought the actor was really good, and I thought, just the slyness to him. I think the way maybe more so the actor plays it than how he's written, because I think on paper he's just kind of almost generic, evil, doctory, creepy, doctory man. But I think how the actor plays it is really interesting, because it could just be like, this man is very obviously evil and hiding things, but also because it's multiple appearances as well, you can get a sense of like, I think this guy could just be slimy and a bit creepy because he enjoys creeping people out, which in itself is gross and horrible. But it also could just be that at a service level, but obviously we see there's a bit more to that with him smuggling the sarcophagus, and everything relating to that reveals itself. And I think he also kind of gets away with it. I don't think he actually gets any sort of comeuppance. I think once he kind of exposes to Gunn, like, you know, it's your fault that sarcophagus was brought in. You know, you signed the waivery thing, the form thing. I don't think we actually see him again after that, so I think he just kind of gets off scot-free. But I do like the idea of like a character who kind of gets away with it in that sense as well. But there is like that creepy edge to him. I like that we saw him in multiple appearances, so they could kind of build up to, you know, exactly what some of his motivations were and how dodgy he could be. You know, the corruptedness of Wolfram and Hart still very much being there. And just the idea of like what he can do, like putting those lawyery thoughts into Gunn, and, you know, all these attachments he can add to people. I really liked, you know, the mini kind of things that were slowly revealed about Sparrow as it went on. But I also thought the actor was just really great in that role. So yeah, thought I'd give a shout out to him. Briefly talk Mr. and Mrs. Burkle. Bless them. You know, it is nice to see actually a wholesome set of parents in the Buffyverse. Like properly, they're just good people. They have a good relationship with their child. Even after their child is dead and they don't know about it, they have a good relationship to fake Fred, Illyria pretending to be Fred. I don't know if I'm happy or not that they never found out what happened to Fred. Maybe they would have done later on down the line if the show had continued. Maybe that was the plan, and obviously they just didn't know at the time. But my God, you know, they're just very, very sweet, and I am quite glad we saw them again after like season 3. I think they were in. I don't know if we saw them again after that until these episodes. But yeah, there's a warmth to the actors. I've particularly seen the guy who played the dad in a few things, and he's always been like reliably quite warm and fuzzy, and a kind of a wholesome presence. So he very much brought that. I thought, you know, Mrs. Burkle was also quite nice. So I'm glad that they were brought into the whole story with Fred, and the kind of ignorance bliss side of things with them. The fact that they never found out, and they were being lied to the entire episode, and you're very uncomfortable with that fact, but you also kind of don't want them to find out what happened to Fred. I like how they kind of teased us and played us with that, especially because they are like just genuinely nice people who love their daughter so much and will do anything for her. You know, it's extra tragic in the fact that they had a good relationship with her and they just want what's best for her. So I do like that they brought them back into the fold in regards to that. And yeah, I thought I'd give them a shout out because obviously they're Burkles and I would die for any Burkle. So there you go. Then we have Marcus. You just got to bring in a Firefly alum for the last 5 episodes of a show in the Buffyverse. They did it with Nathan Fillion, and they did it again here. So yeah, again, sort of like a representative for the senior partners or whatever. I think we did have more interesting versions of a character like Marcus. Not much you can do when there's only 5 episodes, and he also came about just as they needed to start wrapping up the show. So, you know, he has to take focus on other things. But I did like him trying to do a few sneaky things behind the scenes, like when he went to talk to Gunn and try and wager a deal, but Gunn was having none of it. I liked that. Obviously, him then kind of hooking up with Harmony to get information. That was all very well and good. But yeah, I think there was kind of that unreadable sense to him. You know, you never quite knew if he was on to what Angel was up to or not. Ultimately, he kind of was. But I think they kind of sold it quite well. Like, it could go either way. He could be, you know, not in the know, or he could be playing a long game. And I like they kind of toyed with that for the entire time. And the fact that he was like a physical presence and a physical threat for Angel, as well as being able to be quite sneaky behind the scenes and stuff. I did like that kind of duality to him in a sense. So that was good. But yeah, I do think if it was, you know, if it wasn't someone from Firefly, if it wasn't Adam Baldwin playing him and someone I recognised and played a character that I liked elsewhere, I probably wouldn't be as interested in Marcus, but it was fun to see him pop up. And yeah, I like how they kind of stopped him in the end. And I think Marcus is such a fan of his own voice. That kind of was his downfall in the end, because he said just one thing too much, and Angel was like, "Oh yeah, I'll just suck your blood and get that power and help you. Me and my son will kill you now. Goodbye." So I don't think there was much more to Marcus than we actually saw or needed to see. He very much played the role that he needed to play. I don't think there was anything brand new to him that we hadn't seen in other characters already and done probably better or more interesting. But I actually did like the presence that Marcus had. I liked seeing this enormous man just dressed in a suit, being quite formal most of the time, but then shit can hit the fan and he will easily beat you up. So I like the threat that he kind of posed was both physical and kind of mental. In the end, I like that he kind of covered all bases in that sense. So yeah, decent enough kind of character as like a mini antagonist for the last couple of episodes, and I think it was very satisfying to see him get his what for at the end, with Angel and Connor teaming up against him. So that was all very well and good. A decent minor antagonist for the end, and kind of pairing him up with like the Circle of the Blackthorn to be the things we need to taken out. I think there was a nice build up to it. I don't think it seemed necessarily too rushed with his arrival and then his exit in the final episode. I think it was quite well handled, like what he kind of did and when. I think they ultimately, like, for what the character needed to do and what the focus was for him, they showed a few different sides to him, but also they got him where he needed to go, and I think it was very well paced in regards to how things played out with him. Then we have Connor. The redemption of Connor. It's sad that this wasn't the Connor we hadn't seen. This is the Connor we should have gotten, I think, and this was the Connor who would have been raised by Angel, I think, eventually, but obviously when he was taken away by Holtz and everything, all of that happened. We don't need to talk about that. But yeah, this was absolutely Connor at his best. I loved him in Origin, and I loved him in Not Fade Away. I like that, he did get his memories back. And even with that knowledge, he can now balance it now, and he understands what Angel was coming from. He doesn't blame him anymore because he doesn't have the anger of, everything that happened in the past with Holtz and everything. He has a much clearer head on his shoulders now, and he's not kind of corrupted by and manipulated by people like Jasmine or whatever, which I did very much enjoy seeing, and kind of get away from that and even make light of it and make jokes about it at times. And yeah, just to see, he's mature enough to kind of put a distance between himself and Angel, but also, he does care enough to kind of come back and help him save the day in the finale. I just love that growth, and the fact that they ended things on good terms was, very, very important, and I'm glad they managed to do that with the end of the show coming. Even if, we never saw him again after season 4, I do think he had a decent ending as a character, but I do like that, for Angel's sake more than anything, he got to patch things up with his son, and Connor got his memories back and could move forward and choose the best life for himself, having all the knowledge and everything that he needed. It was nice that, Angel's sacrifice was justified and worth it in the end, because it kind of gave Connor the life that he deserved and needed, and made him the person he needed to be. And he ended up being really likable and nice in the end. He can make quips and stuff like that. He's still physically capable of stuff, but also he can have a good relationship if very restricted, and putting the blockades up because it's what's for it's what's best. He can still have a relationship of sorts with his father. So yeah, I really loved catching up with Connor and seeing him again. I did hope we would, and I'm glad we did. And I'm glad we got to see Connor at his absolute best. And it is kind of bittersweet because it's like, I wish this had been the Connor we'd always had. But it's just one of those things, isn't it? What can you really do about it? It's a shame, but I am glad we kind of left Connor off on a very, very positive note as a character, because there were so many moments in season 4 he could have been so interesting if they just focused on not the cliched, boring, angsty teenager shit that you get everywhere, and just what they were delving into near the end of that season was so good and interesting. I'm glad they kind of did justice to that side of Connor we didn't quite get to see in season 4, and give him a really nice character in season 5 and ended him off on a good note. So yeah, I loved what they did with Connor in the end. He had his frustrations in season 4 that I understood, but I really, really loved him a lot in season 5, and he did some great stuff, and Vincent was great. So big fan of the character in the end. I'm glad we kind of got a proper redemption that the character was worthy of. because all the structure was there for him to be a really unique, interesting character, and I'm glad they kind of helped bring some justice to that vision in the end. So that's good. Sajan, we saw him obviously very briefly just to kind of tie up that loose end that I didn't even know needed tying up, but I'm glad they kind of did in a way, even if I'm not sure it was necessary for sure. He could have just been defeated by the, when he got sucked into the pot, and that was that. But, they wanted to bring back that prophecy thing. It's a means to an end of bringing Connor back into the story, bringing Wesley his memories back. And, I've always enjoyed Sajan anyway. It's like kind of a funny demon antagonist kind of sense. I've always enjoyed the energy that he brought. So it was fun to get a little taste of that again here and to properly tie up his story. And the fact that he kind of brought about his own destruction, I like the irony behind that. Even if there wasn't that much to the story in the end when they brought him back into things. It was a cool loose end to tie up, I guess, because I did enjoy when he was about, mainly in season 3, and I liked his relationship with Holtz and everything there. So to revisit that in an episode and properly give an end to that, it was fun to see him pop up as well. And then Dragon, I can't remember, Angel's friend who guarded, Illyria and guarded the giant asshole, who Angel then snapped the neck of in the finale, and he didn't really get any justice. Bittersweet ending. Well, not bittersweet at all for him, just downright bad. But, kind of a means to an end of the morally grey thing. And was the sacrifice really worth it to save the day? Probably, needs of the many. But sadly, there's not time to really explore Angel's kind of guilt and grief over that. They had to move on so quickly because of the pacing. So I do kind of feel like he got a bit shortchanged as a character in the end. But again, I also didn't feel like we were going to see him again after A Hole in the World. But we did. But, I do like the concept of someone who, can't lie. And another kind of old friend of Angel's that we hadn't seen before. And, I guess it's kind of refreshing in a way that Angel has someone from his past who didn't want to kill him and hated him. But even then, by the end, he still kills the friend. So, what can you do? But yeah, I liked a bit of what the character stood for. I like the idea of the character, I guess, more than the actual characterization of him, because I guess, by his very nature of what the character needed to be, there wasn't too much personality and, theatrics to him. Even though I've seen the actor in other things before, because he's a British actor. I've seen him in Waterloo Road and stuff, so he's very good. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention him because his ending was quite brutal, really, and the fact that he didn't know what was actually going on with that, and he just saw his friend snap his neck and he was dead. He didn't really get much justice. It's kind of sad, but one of those things, I guess. What can you do? Brr, 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 brr. But yeah, I thought I'd mention him anyway, because he did kind of become a bit significant in the end, if there's not much to the character. And then Anne as well. I love that we kind of checked in with her one last time in the finale. A really nice little background character having her own arc. When I think her name was Lily before. Obviously she was in Lie to Me. Then she was in Anne. Then she was in Blood Money, I think. And then she was definitely in this. I can't remember, there's something else when she showed up. But it was really cool to revisit her one last time, because she has been kind of one of the more significant and super successful kind of background character arcs. I'm just checking in with her every now and again. I really enjoyed that, and I loved her scene with Gunn in the finale and what she was kind of saying. But I'm we just need to get on with it and just need to help these people, even if it is the end of the world, Fighting the good fight, she kind of really tied into that sense. And I loved what she said to Gunn then. It was just really satisfying to see a character like who she was in Lie to Me. And they could have easily just left it at that and never seen her again, following that cult of believing in vampires and all of that, wanting eternal life, to where she ends up. A really nice little background arc that's done very effectively, I think. And I love just seeing how far she kind of come and grown and changed and matured. It was a very satisfying kind of background little thing, and I thought the actress was always very good. And yeah, it felt quite fitting in a way for her to be in the last episode, because while she's never been super prominent, I think you also are very aware of her presence, and I do like that a lot. So yeah, she was good, kind of a little addition to the finale, and it goes to show a bit of Gunn's side of things as well, and how he liked to spend his last days. It kind of fed into Gunn's story as well, in the finale, which was quite cool. So yeah, it was fun to see her pop up, and I do like her quite a bit. And then finally, I just want to talk about the Circle of the Blackthorn as kind of like a collective, because there's a lot of little individuals in there. I do like all the individual, there's a lot of range to like the characters that made up the Circle. And again, it's one of those things where it's just a very last minute kind of badge that's kind of appeared out of nowhere. It has to be a secret society because we've never heard of them, but we needed like a villain for the end of the show that can't be, the senior partners or whatever. So, they're kind of forced into narrative a bit and just come out of nowhere. But I do like the idea of them. And I do like that kind of set the stage for a clear like finale of us versus them. We can be a team, take all these guys out. Everyone on their own individual missions. I thought actually the idea of them as a way of structuring the finale and for what the characters needs to do in the finale and making sure everyone had like a good moment to shine. I thought the idea behind them was actually quite clever, how they brought that in. And obviously there would have been probably more expansion of that. The fact that they were like behind so much of the stuff and yet we'd never heard of them until like an episode before the end of the show. It's one of those things, like it's just a shame that they couldn't explore that and properly delve into it and build up to it properly because they got cancelled. But I like the idea of them anyway, and I thought it was a cool kind of setup for the finale to see them all be taken out in that way. So, a neat kind of little villain, little group of enemies to take out. There's been a few little like groups of villains in the past, and I like that they were kind of made up of characters we had seen littered throughout the seasons prior. Particularly, obviously, season 5 set up a lot of them and brought them into it. I thought that was quite cool. So it wasn't like entirely new characters, but a lot of them we had seen before, but we're now actually turns out to be part of this circle. And I thought that was a neat idea as well, like an anti-Avengers team. So that was a neat idea, I think, for like the final villain we used to take out in the show. I really like them as well. And of course we need to shout out this guy. The best character in season 5, Puppet Angel, of course. He was great. Iconic. But yeah, 10 out of 10 because it had a puppet in this season. But I think that's kind of all the major key characters I wanted to speak about. I desperately need some water, so I think I'm going to leave it there for the characters anyway. Again, apologies if I have missed any characters out. I think in terms of like major characters, I think I've covered everyone, hopefully. If I haven't, sorry, but there's not much I can do about it. Either way, those are just some of the ones I wanted to really shout out because, I thought they were very impactful, or their main characters, or the actors were particularly great in those parts, or they just really stood out to me significantly. And obviously there's quite a few more characters in the season than just those in general, but I think those are the key ones that should be talked about. So that is everything to do with the core characters of season 5. So next we're going to do a bit of a discussion about some of the themes that I picked up on. Okay, so next we're going to be talking about just some of the themes throughout season 5 that I personally picked up on. Obviously there's going to be plenty more that I did think of, but just not going to be speaking about today. I'm just going to pick up on like the core ones that I could think of decent examples for. There's obviously going to be some out there that others have found or picked up on themselves that I just haven't thought of, or I'm just not going to be talking about thus far. I've narrowed it down to like 8 key ones that I'm going to talk about. So do feel free to let me know, ones that you could find and pick up on. Have a cool discussion about that in the comments. But again, these aren't all of them. These are just kind of the more significant ones that I felt should be talked about in regards to what I think season 5 kind of had going. If I really pick apart about like all the different aspects of it and talk shit about it, as I tend to do. So the first one, you guessed it, folks. It's redemption. It's like the classic. I think that's probably a core theme of just the show in general. That's like the main theme of the entire show. I think that's certainly been present in every season. I think I've probably talked about that in every one of these reviews. But, it is what it is. So some key examples of that, we have kind of like Angel and Spike and their whole past, and like the Shanshu prophecy tying into that and kind of battling for who is worthy of that. And, that could be their reward almost for redeeming themselves. That's kind of what they're fighting for. And, we see Angel kind of sign his right to that away. And in a way that could be his actual redemption. And that's how he maybe would have earned it. And that ironically, the moment he earns it is in signing his reward away, which could be like an interesting thing if you see it that way. It depends how everyone feels on like Angel and Spike and, their redemptions, etc., which is a whole mess that I no longer, for the sake of my mental health, get into that debate. But, still an interesting kind of conversation to have. And then there's also Gunn, tries to redeem himself after Fred's death and his role in that. He shuts himself off in that torture dimension for a bit. Numero Cinco. Who'd have thought? Can't believe I didn't bring him up sooner. He kind of, they want redemption a bit. I think they're trying to find some sort of peace for what happened to all their fallen brothers. Fred's death, making that mean something. So it's a different kind of sense of redemption. They couldn't save Fred. They kind of had to let her die. But, with Angel's plan, like the Circle of Blackthorn and everything, they could make Fred's death mean something by kind of convincing, his friends that he was potentially orchestrating the actual death to happen to kind of get the Circle on his side and get him, a way in. Making that mean something, kind of redeeming themselves in that sense and redeeming the fact that Fred's death happened and they had to let it happen. Then last example, just for that one in particular, Cordelia, in a different kind of way. It's not like in terms of like actually what happens in the season, like in terms of plot, just the redemption that her character deserved after how she was treated in season 4, and the fact they, I think, redeemed her character and redeemed her story in You're Welcome, and kind of got that right and gave her the peace that she deserved, Charisma deserved, we as the fans deserved as well. It's kind of a redemption of a different sort in terms of redeeming her character, because it would have been very sad to have left things off on season 4 the way they were, and that was just it. Then the next theme, loyalty. So we have the team kind of doubting Angel near the end of the show, because obviously he's got his whole plan for the Circle of the Blackthorn, so they're kind of testing their unwavering loyalty to him and doubting, like, is there going to be a confrontation here that we're not going to like, and we're going to have to maybe take him out as Angel turned, and obviously Lorne kind of loses that loyalty for Angel and what they're doing in the end, and he goes off. Nox and his loyalty to Illyria, for better or worse, we have these followers of Illyria, and his loyalty to her is ultimately tested. And how does it end up, Nox? How does it end up for you, buddy? And then Wesley, torn loyalties between Fred and his father, in lineage, and ultimately, he's more loyal to Fred because he thinks he's going to get hurt, so he essentially would have chosen to kill his father. So like loyalty between like family and the person that you love, so like that. Eve, kind of not knowing where her loyalties lie, particularly like the earlier parts of the season, like exactly what game is she playing, and then ultimately her loyalty seemingly more so to Lindsay than anything else, kind of unwavering to him, tossing up that idea of where does her loyalty lie. Harmony, kind of, seemingly loyal to Angel for a bit, but then, she kind of goes off with Marcus, has a bit of a fling and betrays Angel and everything. She doesn't really have any set loyalty to anyone, but that's just kind of the nature of Harmony as a character anyway, and like Solar's vampire and stuff. And then Angel and Spike in regards to Buffy, their kind of loyalty to her, they can't quite let go of her and their relationships to her, respectively. No, I think they're always going to be loyal to how they feel about her, even if there are going to be other people that come along eventually and maybe turn their heads or whatever. There's always going to be that kind of side to them with Buffy, and how that all works out. And what Andrew kind of says as well, Buffy's like he says like Buffy loves you both, so even Buffy kind of has that loyalty to both of them, and probably always will. They always will have a place in her heart, and she'll have a place in theirs, even though the hearts don't beat. So there you go. Then another theme could be like finding your place, finding like where you belong in the world. So again, not just in the world, because we have Angel and Spike again with like the Shanxi prophecy. Is their place? Do they belong to what this prophecy says? Which one of them is like this chosen vampire who becomes human again? So is that a place for either of them? For none of them? Kind of that's a big debate between all of them throughout the season. Gunn, he doesn't really, have a place for a bit, and then coming into this season, he kind of gets the lawyer brain, and he gets all the suits and stuff, and he seems to be thriving in this environment, so he's kind of finally found his place after feeling like he's been floating or just been something he didn't want to be for a while, and then ultimately that being tested with what happens to Fred happening, and all of that. Lorne, ultimately deciding that maybe his place isn't here anymore, kind of needing to go off and find something else for himself, by the end of it. Lawson as well, Sam Lawson, after he gets turned, by a vampire with a soul, he doesn't really have a place. He's kind of floating about as well, purposeless. He doesn't really feel desire for much, and that's kind of, can't even imagine what that would be like. So he needs to find a place or find some sort of meaning. And Illyria, she kind of comes back, finds all her, everything she thought she was coming back to, her whole kingdom just absolutely destroyed and long since dead and gone. So now she needs to find her place in the world as it is. Obviously she gets Wesley to try and help her navigate that. And Connor as well, trying to find, especially once he gets his memories back, kind of finding the balance of where does he belong. Should he stay with his family? Is he loyal to Angel now that he remembers that that's his actual father? He's kind of found a decent place for himself to fit into this world finally, kind of exploring that. And then in terms of like a plot sense, I guess we have Angel trying to find a place in the Circle of the Blackthorn. He has obviously his reasons for doing so, but it kind of ties into like finding your place in like a more plot sense rather than something to do with like characters and motivations and stuff. And then the idea of bouncing back, kind of coming back from, some kind of misstep or losing your way a bit, kind of bouncing back from that, getting back onto the right path. Angel struggled with that a lot this season with the Wolfram and Hart business. Cordelia came along, helps him bounce back from that. Everyone kind of bouncing back from Fred's demise as well, to try and resettle their focus on Wolfram and Hart, and then later on the Circle of the Blackthorn, all of that. Gunn bouncing back from, his guilt over Fred's death, and bouncing back from readjusting to what his life's going to be now and where his place is. Then we have I've lost my place. Like Wolfram and Hart kind of, bouncing back from the several instances in which they tried to screw Angel over and stuff like that, and just trying to find the right place to move forward with that. Lindsay kind of bouncing back from, the events of when he went off in season 2, and he's kind of got this new thirst for revenge and stuff. He's trying to bounce back from that. Spike bouncing back from coming back from the dead, and being kind of, incorporeal for a bit, and kind of necessarily almost finding that through Lindsay as Doyle, and that's kind of leaning into like the right path kind of side of that. So we have that. Another theme is like moving forward, or adjustment, if you will, kind of making sense of the world, coming to terms with the world as it is. We kind of have that with Angel really realising like this is just the fight that's going to be ongoing, and everyone trying to adjust to a life in Wolfram and Hart and what that could mean for them, for better or worse. They all kind of struggle with that in different ways. Some of them thrive, some of them don't. Connor, gets his memories back, still tries to move forward from that, and he has this family now, this is where he belongs. He can't necessarily have that relationship with Angel, he wants to put that distance there, so he's kind of adjusting to his new life. Wesley adjusting when he gets his memories back as well, and trying to move forward from that. Fred's death, trying to move forward from losing her, and the big obstacle for doing that is obviously Illyria's presence now, and she's also trying to move forward once her kingdom's gone. Cordelia is physically like moving forward into whatever comes next and kind of ascending. Once she does her one last little thing to help Angel get him back on track, and she's moving on. And I guess Angel's also moving on in a sense from that kind of connection, because he found Nina, and they're maybe trying to, work things out. Doesn't work out, but they are kind of moving forward in a way. And then, Angel and Spike adamant that they're moving on and they're moving forward from Buffy, even though we kind of know that's not really the case, because they make a joke of it at the end of the girl in question. But the idea of them trying to like let her go a bit, and maybe adjusting to a life without her, and just adjusting to this whole new bizarre life of theirs in general, and adjusting to each other, moving forward together. Then another theme is the parent and child divide, which I think is quite prevalent in Angel, particularly obviously with season 3 onwards with Connor's presence. And Angel and Connor is like a big one. Maybe not so significant as it was in season 4, because there's a bit more of an understanding now that Connor had this new set of memories, but also gets his memories back, and they kind of bounce each other out a bit. So still kind of that physical divide at first, because from sheer lack of memory, Angel is separated from his child. even if they do exist in the same plane of existence now. There's still that divide there because Connor didn't know who he was for the longest time, and even when he does remember, Connor still kind of puts some boundaries there. So not going to have that much of a relationship because he doesn't really want that. He has another family now. And then once they do kind of come back together and like beat Marcus up and kill him, Angel like sends Connor off and puts that divide there because he wants to keep him safe, because that's all he ever wanted. That's why he did the memory wipe in the first place. And then obviously we have Fred separated from her parents. We said the flashbacks of her moving away and like coming to LA, so that's like a physical divide there. And now the divide is even further than that because Fred's dead, and the Burkles don't know that, and they're interacting with their daughter who's not their daughter. So it's kind of that divide, and it's one that they're unaware of, which is horrible. The child that mother was going to like wave away to that little group of members that were in the circle who were going to ultimately sacrifice it when it turned like 16 or 18 or something. So another parent-child divide there, and the fact that Spike saves that kid and kind of gets it back to the mother in the end. Cordelia and Jasmine, we have that line when she's like, maternal instincts aside, I hope you kicked his ass for me, or something like that. Very much the divide there because it's not a child she very much asked for. It's a huge invasion of her body and everything. And of course there's going to be no love lost for that weird creature that she birthed, possessed her and then gave birth to itself. So of course she's not really going to have much of a connection to that. And then obviously the exploration of Wesley and his father, even if it was a cyborg android thing in the end, there is clearly a massive divide there with Wesley and his family, and it doesn't really ever get resolved because even by the end of the episode, you see him on the phone to his mum and his dad, and no love lost. Then penultimate theme that I'm going to talk about is being a shell of your former self, or just shells in general. I think the obvious one there is Fred and Illyria, and Illyria is using Fred's shell to inhabit, so very much the shell of a former self, with Illyria being Fred. And even when she does take on Fred's form, it's still kind of a shell of who Fred used to be, because it's not actually her, just it's like looks alone really. And then again, Sam Lawson from While We Fight, after he's turned by a vampire with a soul, he's kind of very much a shell of his former self because he can't really feel for anything and he has no purpose for anything. He's very much just empty. Then we see, like getting flashbacks to Angel and Spike when they were like Angelus or William or just Angel from way back when. It's kind of a shell of who they are currently to us as an audience. They, in flashbacks, all of those people who've developed so much are now shells of, who they used to be, who they go on to be. So there's that as well. And then Gunn kind of becoming, a shell of his former self, and the confidence that he kind of acquired through working at Wolfram and Hart, that kind of very quickly goes once Fred dies. Wesley as well, you think of who Wesley used to be, and he's very much kind of a shell in that case. He's obviously, there's development there and there's still stuff there for him to live through, but you think of the Watcher that he used to be and stuff like that, and the character we first met, he's kind of been emptied out a bit. Same with like Lorne, he's kind of a shell of his former self now because he's just lost all that kind of passion and drive for anything really, is all gone by the end of the show. And then in a more positive way, you could say Connor as well. He's very much a shell of his former self, but that's kind of something to celebrate rather than something to feel sad about, because he's removing like the shell, I guess, or moving the insides of the shell actually saved him a bit and actually made him quite likable to a lot of people, so you could tie that in. And then the last one I'm going to be talking about, like the idea of like a false reality, and the trials and tribulations, and that kind of comes about, which pops up quite a few times this season. So we have Angel when he has that parasite thing on him that I think Eve and Lindsay kind of set on him, and he kind of dreams up that world. I think that's the episode that David directed himself. I think he's like sat in the chair and it's like in like a nice little country setting. So that's kind of a false reality for him that I think Spike ultimately breaks him out of, I think. Then Illyria pretending to be Fred, that's kind of placing people in a false reality, pretending that she's someone that she's not, and giving up, pulling up that pretense for Fred's parents as well, so they have no idea that they're living in the false reality that their daughter's alive. Then Lindsay and Gunn in that torture dimension, they're kind of living in this false reality of like being a happy husband with a kid and a wife, and then they obviously have to repeat going down to the basement and have their heart removed and all that kind of false reality as well. Illyria and her kind of kingdom, her home, she kind of has this idea of what this is like, and it turns out to be a false reality because it's long since been destroyed, and that kind of brings it all crashing down for her. And then Roger the Cyborg, Wesley's fake dad, we think we know what's going on there, and then obviously when Wesley kills him, we get the reveal that it was actually a cyborg, so that's kind of a false reality going on there. Connor's memories and like this new life that he has for himself, thinking he's always been raised by this family, that's a completely false reality as well. That's Angel and Wolfram and Hart helped orchestrate for him. And then also Dana and her false reality, thinking that Spike is the person who abused her, when obviously she's just getting some Slayer memories a bit confused and mixed up. So that's a completely false reality for her as well. So yeah, that's just a couple, that's 8 I think, themes that I want to talk about. There's like ones that really stood out to me, or I felt like had substantial kind of evidence and examples of, that I wanted to discuss for this. Again, there are plenty more, and I'm sure there's some that I haven't even thought of, so do let me know any of your ones as well. But yeah, that's kind of some of the core themes that I think Angel Season 5 had going for it. So yeah, that's kind of the key ones. And now it's time to talk about what our favourite episodes were in Season 5. Okay, so it's my favourite bit of the review when we get to talk about like our favourite episode and stuff. I've always found this very, very interesting. And as I mentioned, I think near the start of this review, I think this is probably the most similar, the results of your guys' votes and kind of my personal choices have ever been. And I think it just speaks to like the back half of Season 5 is generally considered to be a pretty damn good run and has like all the best episodes of the season in it. So we can really delve into that now. Again, thank you to everyone who did vote on the community post and kind of gave me their 3 top episodes for the season. I did have a few people comment on it after I'd already counted them, so apologies to people who did type a bit later after I counted them, because they haven't counted. I did add an extra little bit onto the post eventually saying that it was closed, and even then I still got a few comments, so apologies to those people. Maybe they just wanted to tell me what their favourites were, but they did not count in this poll in the end. So, I still did have like 90-ish responses, I think. So thank you to everyone who sent those in to me. And again, if you sent in more than 3 or less than 3, I also didn't count those because that would just kind of skew the averages and stuff. So I did not do that. So yeah, either way, thank you everyone for kind of taking part for the last time, giving me your favourite episodes. Sad times. But we obviously are going to start with what you guys voted for. And yeah, there's definitely a pretty damn big divide, considering like there's not even like a clear top 5. There's a clear popular 4 episodes, and the gap between like 5 and 4 onwards is like laughable, like how big the divide is, and like there's a joint 5th place for multiple episodes and stuff, and yeah, it's really interesting, but it's kind of narrowed down in a way to 11 slots across the 22 episode season. So yeah, we might as well just kind of go through it. But in joint 11th place, so joint bottom, with 0 votes, we have Conviction, Just Rewards, Unleashed, The Cautionary Tale of Numero 5, and Why We Fight. Not that surprised, because I know Cautionary Tale and Why We Fight are regarded as probably the 2 weakest episodes in the season, so they weren't really surprising to me. And then Conviction, Just Rewards, and Unleashed, that's the first 3 episodes of the season, and obviously Cautionary Tale is episode 6. So, that's 4 episodes very early on, straight away. That's no love for them, sadly. I think maybe some of them did get some votes after I'd already closed the poll, but obviously we're not counting those, so sorry. But yeah, there you go. So that's a lot of early in the season episodes with not even a single vote for them. So I think, again, leading into like the whole slow burn I think that the season has going for it. And then joint 10th place is Sole Purpose and Underneath, which both got 1 vote. 9th place with 2 votes was Hellbound and Power Play. So again, quite an early one, but then quite a late one, the penultimate episode. Joint 8th is Destiny and Time Bomb, which both got 4 votes. Again, kind of first half and the second half episode, so interesting. Then 7th place was Lineage, which got 5 votes. 6th place was The Girl in Question, which got 6 votes. Again, I was actually surprised that that did. Like, kind of got halfway up, because I know that seemed, based on the comments, that seemed to be quite a controversial one. Like, that was a very Marmite episode. But 6 people have it in their top 3 at least. So that was 6th place. Then our top 5, again, as you can tell, probably still got a lot of episodes to go. But we actually have 5 episodes here in 5th place, joint 5th. All getting 7 votes. We have Life of the Party, Harm's Way, Damage, Shells, and Origin. So actually quite a spaced out mix across the season of those episodes there in joint 5th. So we didn't even have like a clear top 5 like individual episodes. So yeah. So bear in mind, 5th place is if you got 7 votes, which is absolutely hilarious, because now we jump up to 4th place, which had 36 votes. So 29 vote difference between 5th and 4th place. So it's actually quite close between the top 4. In fact, there's only 1 vote in it between 1st and 2nd place. But 4th place with 36 votes is A Hole in the World. Again, probably surprising no one. I don't think it's surprising anyone that these are the top 4 episodes. Orders might change from person to person, but I imagine a lot of people would have these as their top 4. But yeah, 4th was A Hole in the World. 3rd place with 39 votes, so only 3 ahead, is Smile Time. He's sad that he's only got 3rd. Sorry about it. I'm sorry. And then 2nd place with 46 votes, so again, only 7 in that, is You're Welcome, the 100th episode. And then, again, probably not a huge surprise to me, 1st place, but again, only 1 vote in it, 1 vote more, 47 votes, Not Fade Away, the finale. There seemed to be a very positive response to that whole episode and the wrapping up. But again, You're Welcome was only 1 vote behind that, so very, very close between the top 2. But the fact that, the top 4 have 30 to 40-ish votes each, and then the rest of them, 7 or under, I think that says a lot about, there are clearly key favourite episodes in this season, and then the rest of the season is kind of like a bit of an averaging muddle. So there's definitely some very, very high highs and a good string of episodes with Angel that everyone has a general consensus on loving, and then the rest of the season it seems to be a bit more very much split down the middle, and very much evenly distributed into which episodes people liked. But like the earlier episodes, like the first couple, just no love for them in this particular poll. Obviously that could be different in a different community or a different poll or anywhere else online. But that was how you guys voted, to everyone who responded to that. So thank you very much as always. I do think that's very, very interesting how that all worked out. And particularly interesting for me as we go into my top 5 as well. And so my top 5, as I think I mentioned at the start of the review, I found it incredibly easy picking my top 5. I think there were just some clear standouts, and really, really easy time actually. Which I don't really know, for better or worse, what that says about the season, but there you go. It is one of those things. I just think, there are lots of episodes that I think in other seasons that didn't quite have as high highs as season 5 gets to would be quite easily contenders for people's favourites, and there'd be a bit more of a debate. But I think because the quality of season 5 just across the board is particularly strong and particularly consistent, I think some are just going to kind of get unfairly kind of shafted in favour of like the really iconic episodes, even though there are plenty of very, very good ones that would, I think, score very well had they been in like other seasons, for example. But yeah, obviously the key difference between my top 5 and the top 5 that you guys voted for is that I just have 1 episode in each slot, and obviously 5th place for you guys and what you voted for, there was like a joint 5th place with multiple episodes. But I just had to pick 5 key ones. Need to just trying to work out exactly where. Okay, yeah. Okay, so we actually do have all exactly the same episodes in our top 5. I think the order's just a bit different for the most part. Actually, not even the most part. I think it's just swapping around a couple. But yeah, probably not really a surprise, because some of these episodes have really stood the test of time and are iconic. So I doubt these are like the biggest shock to anyone in the world. I don't even have like any, honourable mentions this season. That I felt like I nearly made it, because I just had my top 5 and that was that. So it's actually quite an easy ride. So kudos to season 5 for providing that. But yes, my top 5. In 5th place is A Hole in the World. I think it's obvious why this didn't rank higher for me. While it is an exceptional episode, and the cast are on top form, and it's very well written and everything. I just can't entirely get behind the decision to kill Fred, obviously. And it's so brutal and so awful and uncomfortable and sad for me to watch. It's not going to be one I rush back to, and I think that needs to kind of be taken into account to an episode that I would need to kind of keep watching, because I have such an unpleasant time thinking about this episode and rewatching it. I can't enjoy it as much as I would enjoy others, even though I do recognise it is a fantastic episode and easily one of the best episodes in the season, which is why it's in my top 5. And it's 4th place for you guys, so it's only swapped around by 1. But yeah, that was quite the episode. I think we can all agree on that. I had quite the reaction to that. I was a bit upset, I think it's safe to say. But yeah, I do very much recognise what a fantastic episode it is, but it's brutal and it's just so awful and sad to watch that I can't enjoy it as much as I would enjoy and get more out of others. I think it's just such an unpleasant time. And not in the body is a very unpleasant episode to watch, and it's very brutal and awful to watch in a way. But because I relate to what's going on in that episode, and there's so much realness to it, I do get some kind of cathartic sense of closure and relatability out of watching the body again and again. Whereas A Hole in the World is just cruel because it could be, and I think I can't quite get behind that fully, even if the episode is fantastic. So that's why that's my 5th place. 4th place for me is Origin. I kind of had in mind A Hole in the World, yes, definitely, and then my top 3, definitely, yeah. And then Origin kind of I was just going through the episode again, I was like, oh yeah, of course that one. And then obviously because A Hole in the World is just so horrible, this took 4th place, and for you guys it was joint 5th. So we basically just swapped those two around in our scorings. But yeah, I loved revisiting Connor and catching up with him as a character and seeing this is the Connor that we all should have had right from the off, and it's sad that we didn't. But we got some real nice exploration of his relationship with Angel, his newfound kind of family and what's going on with that. Some nice closure, should we need it, for Angel and Connor's relationship as well, and a bit of setup for the finale as he gets his memories back and stuff. I also love Wesley's side of the portion with that episode and him getting his memories back and bringing Sarjan into that, and the whole irony of him kind of ultimately getting himself killed by writing that prophecy in the first place. And yeah, I really enjoyed revisiting Connor's character and kind of giving him, again, like Cordelia, revisiting that character that was kind of a bit mistreated and misplaced in season 4 and doing them justice. And I feel like Origin very much is that for Connor. And it was just an added treat that he then showed up in the finale to help out a bit. But, this was kind of where his story was brought to an end, and revisiting that. And, I learned that from my father. It's just a really nice, beautiful kind of capping off of, quite the dynamic in the show across season 4. But yeah, it was just lovely to kind of get some nice, solid, happy closure and a happy ending, as happy as it could be anyway, to the story of Angel and his son. So I really love them revisiting that and doing it justice. At long last, we've got a really good kind of adventure for Connor. And then 3rd place, I'm just trying to... Yeah, okay, so spoiler alert here. It's exactly the same for me and you and what you voted for now. We have the same top 3. So 3rd place for me is Smile Time. So let's just move that out of the way and bring you back into play, my friend. Just what an absolute balmy episode. Absolutely nuts. There you go. How you doing? You alright? You alright? Yeah, good. Yeah, it's just such an insane episode that you can't read what that says now. Insane, ridiculous, but I loved every second of it. They really went there. They really committed to the bit. Very professionally done. It could have easily been quite cheap and crappy, but they really lean into it. It can be kind of creepy, even the song and stuff. And yeah, just very funny, and it explores a bit of Angel trying to move on with a relationship, which I liked. We obviously get the big Fred and Wesley finally get together at the end. Little did I know what was heading for us in the next episode, but I love that. Loved it for that as well. And it's just madness, seeing Spike fight an angel puppet and it somehow works, and it's just absolutely bonkers, but in the best brilliant way. Very inventive, very different, very fresh, and just showed that Angel could still easily fire on all cylinders. you know, in its 5th season and come up with an idea as crazy as that and make it work so well as it did. It's just so much fun watching that episode back. You have an absolute blast with it from start to finish, so easily deserves my 3rd place spot there. But I just think in terms of like meaningful like character stuff and character beats, which I also very much lean into in development and stuff like that, there were 2 that just edged out like the fun that Smile Time could bring. And yeah, in 2nd place is You're Welcome, the 100th episode, obviously the return of Cordelia, and again doing justice to her character, getting to send her off in a really special, important way. I love the nod to Doyle as well. You know, we've got the confrontation with Lindsay that had been built up for the previous couple of episodes. Had some really nice character moments with like a lot of the core members, really. And I liked the idea of Cordelia waking up and coming back to get Angel back on track, and then, you know, just the devastating reveal at the end that she was dead. But still such a wonderful send-off to her character, and, you know, a very emotional celebration of, I think, one of the reasons Angel was so successful, I think, is the core dynamic that Angel and Cordelia ended up developing across those seasons, and I'm glad that kind of took centre stage for the 100th episode. I couldn't really imagine them doing anything more perfect for that 100th episode. You know, got to see Cordelia again one last time, and the Cordelia we knew and loved, and she got a beautiful, if tragic and sad send-off. So yeah, just a phenomenal episode from start to finish. I love that one so much. But there was one that just you know, beat it to the flag, if you will. And again, in a total agreement with you guys, we had the same top 3. My favourite episode of season 5, number 1, is Not Fade Away, the finale. I don't think I could have asked for anything more from it. I absolutely adored the entire finale. I think the perfect ending to Angel. You know, I think in terms of like, if I were to compare it, we don't really need to, but if I were to compare it, I do think it's a better finale for Angel than Chosen was for Buffy. I think it's just a better episode. But yeah, I just, everything about it, you know, seeing everyone kind of have their moment to shine as they take out all the Circle of Blackthorn members, you know, how they wrap up some arcs in very tragic ways, you know, losing Wesley, Gunn being mortally injured apparently as well. You know, the whole thing of Wesley seeing Fred and Illyria kind of helping him through that death and then punching the guy's head open. You know, all of that, Angel signing away, the Shanshu prophecy, and just ending in that alleyway, as a lot of important Angel moments did, and still fighting the good fight. And that's just, you know, they're always going to be trapped in that cycle of getting back up and fighting the next battle, and that just might be it, but that's what they do. That is their life now, and that's who they are. Just a beautiful ending to the show. I love that, you know, there wasn't necessarily closure in like a traditional sense, because the whole point is that they're going to keep going and keep fighting. And yeah, just a perfect finale, I think. I genuinely loved how they wrapped up the show, and I always get nervous with finales these days because some of them burn me. But Angel ended in such a brilliant way, and obviously because it's the end of like the live action Buffyverse as well, I'm so glad that it was such a phenomenal episode from start to finish. I was right in there right from the off. Some beautiful performances, great writing, and just a brilliantly put together final episode for the show, and really setting off on a high, and makes you even sadder really that there wasn't any more of it, because it still had so much more to give, I think, as a show, and I'm sad that we didn't get more, at least not in live action form. But, you know, if they had to go out, I'm glad they went out, given the circumstances, with an impeccable finale, considering they had to kind of rush a lot of it. I don't think the finale felt affected by that. I think the earlier episodes took the brunt of that. And yeah, just gave us a really brilliant send-off to the show. I absolutely loved it. And yeah, easily my favourite episode of Angel Season 5, even though, as we've already talked about, there are some very, very strong contenders there. You know, I could easily swap You're Welcome and Not Fade Away around, I think, but because Not Fade Away was the end of it and was so good at being an ending, to not just like Cordelia's character like You're Welcome was, but to all of them and the show as a whole, I had to give it to Not Fade Away. It was brilliantly done. So yeah, we had exactly the same kind of episodes in our top 5. We obviously just had like a joint 5th place, but Origin was amongst them, and then just swap around Whole New World and Origin, and we have exactly the same top 5. So yeah, there you go. Very easy picks for my top 5 this time around, but that doesn't mean to say the rest of the season wasn't brilliant, because we had some very, very strong episodes as well. And yeah, just a consistently very strong series, especially once we got through like the slow build up, I think, that the early season was. But yeah, I think you can't really deny, especially with our top fives and the votes and stuff, and how vastly more votes the latter half of the season scored in your guys' votes and stuff. You know, I think the latter half of season 5 is one of the strongest runs of the Buffyverse for sure. You know, just Your Welcome Onwards was pretty damn impressive, I think, for sure. You know, I mean, there was also While We Fight, but you know, it's fine. Let's ignore that. But yeah, just phenomenal set of episodes. A brilliant top 5. I do think in terms of like a top 5 episodes that I've picked across all of these reviews and stuff, I do think this is probably the strongest contender for just every single one of the top 5 just being like incredible, like on all cylinders, like best of the best. That's a hell of a 5 episodes to watch, I think. And could certainly stack up to some of the top 5s that I've placed with Buffy and Angel seasons prior. So yeah, just an amazing set of episodes in season 5. I'm so glad that Angel managed to go out on a high with, you know, such a brilliant run. But yeah, that's kind of my top 5 episodes for the season, and my final top 5 episodes. Oh my god, now to do my top 5 episodes. No, not doing that. Maybe one day we'll do a tier list, it's fine. But yeah, that's kind of everything I have to say about those episodes. So I guess it's time to bring this to a close. Okay, so that is my review of Angel Season 5. Brilliant, very, very solid final season for the show, particularly the latter half. We had some incredible, impeccable episodes there, but it was great that Angel went off on, I think, definitely one of the strongest seasons that it has. I'd really have to weigh up like how I feel about Season 3 and this. I'd have to rewatch Season 3, but definitely, you know, top 2 seasons for sure. I can see why people loved it as much as they did, especially once you get past like the slow burn that I think the first half really is. Yeah, it's quite the season. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm glad that the Buffyverse could end with such a solid season. So yeah, I just thought I would take a few moments now that all is said and done and we finished our last review, to kind of just talk about a bit about what's next, because, you know, Buffyverse is a core part of my channel, and while it's not going to be as prevalent anymore now that this is done, you know, I do want to talk a few things about what is to come and like future content and stuff around the Buffyverse. That will happen every now and again, just in case. So I do have some video essays planned. I would love to like revisit older episodes and say like why I love this episode or stuff like that, why I love this character, or my top 5 favourite blah 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 blah. I'd love to do stuff like that. I still want to do like a Buffyverse kind of farewell live stream. But I just don't know timing wise when that's going to be. I think I'd want to leave it for a while, just kind of let this all settle down for a bit, but we'll see. Hopefully at some point. I still want to continue to play Chaos Bleeds as well. I still got the rest of that game to finish, so I'd love to live stream that at some point. There will definitely be rewatches and drunk rewatches as well. You know, I definitely have a few in the pipeline that I'd like to do. I think I do have, you know, a Smile Time rewatch hopefully coming up, and planning that with someone. I do need to rewatch Doppelgangland as well. I need to contact Shan and see if we can arrange that, because it's been so long, but I wanted to wait until this was all out of the way, so we can do that. I'd love to cover the comics as well. Still trying to work out a format of how I do that, but, you know, I would like to at least very much talk about the comics and stuff for both Buffy and Angel. Probably going to be a Patreon exclusive because of copyright stuff, but I would also like to do episode commentaries, so I can include just the full thing and then just do a bit of a commentary track over it. Be maybe something a bit different and fun to do every now and again, but again, I couldn't show the entire footage of a 45-minute episode on YouTube, so that'd probably have to be something for Patreon to do, but, you know, something a bit different and fun. But if there's any other things you'd like to see me do, if you'd like to see me do like some more tier lists or something, because I've been doing those, do let me know. I would appreciate hearing what guys you would want to see in terms of Buffyverse content, and beyond, really. So, you know, I'm willing to listen and take on any ideas that might appeal to me for Buffyverse related stuff. But this is the end of an era. This is kind of the end of me regularly covering the Buffyverse on the channel. This is it. This is like the final hurdle to kind of jump over, and I've enjoyed jumping over all of them, and hopefully you have as well. So yeah, just an absolutely massive thank you to everyone who has supported my reactions over the years, supported these reviews as well. I know they're long. I know I go on for way too long. I know I ramble, but thank you for putting up with my bullshit. You know, whether you've just, you know, you've never commented or anything, you've just watched them all in the background a bit, but you know, every view, every like, every share, every comment, all the support has been mind-blowing. I couldn't have imagined that, you know, this journey would have been as significant to me, you know, personally and professionally as it has been. You know, I've been able to do this, you know, as a job full time for the past couple of years, especially when, you know, it's a bloody hard time to have had a job, you know, out and about. It's kind of worked out incredibly well, and I have you to thank for that, for keeping a roof over my head for so long. So, you know, it's a big thanks to you guys, particularly obviously my patrons on Patreon who have kept the lights on and have allowed me to actually keep making these reactions and these reviews and stuff. It has meant the world. So yeah, just a massive thank you for everyone who supported these. You know, if this is the end, if you're only around for Buffyverse stuff, thank you for stopping by, for being part of the journey. Hopefully later on down the line, maybe we shall kind of cross paths again with a show that I'm watching that you're also interested in yet again. But yeah, it's been an absolute blast. It's been a real pleasure. You know, there's been highs and lows as every journey has, but you know, feeling very nostalgic as we reach the end to it here. But also my mouth is very dry, so I do need to wrap this up. But thank you so much for all your support over the last couple of years as we've been covering the Buffyverse. It's been an absolute pleasure. One of the best things I've ever decided to do. And I hope you've enjoyed this review as well. Yeah, it's been quite something. So yeah, just thank you for kind of being so accepting, for the most part, of my views of the Buffyverse, and for being so brilliant and supportive and engaged and wonderful. It's been an absolute pleasure. So that is going to be everything, I think. So I will sign off. Thanks for watching. Oh, and you're welcome.